Exclusive, elegant, expensive. Uniquely Monaco, the highlight of the Formula One calendar for many, and the race that every driver wants to win. Round 6 of the championship is the 71st time that Grand Prix cars have competed on a track that winds its way through the streets of the second smallest country in the world, a place where the wealth of Formula One sits comfortably in a millionaire's playground. But through the visor, this is no playground. It's a seriously tough challenge with barriers, bumps, curbs and cambers that take a modern Formula One car out of its normal operating environment and leaves the driver hanging on, trying to control a stiffly sprung 750 brake horsepower skateboard for 78 laps of relentless concentration. David, you've won this race twice. You know more than most what it takes. So come on, spill the beans. What's the secret?
Well, the secret, of course, Ben, is to keep it off the barriers. It would seem an obvious thing to say, but this is the race I would think about from when we first tested the new car in the beginning of the pre-season. I'd want to know, you know, that car intimately. I'd want to know that I could thread it through the high-speed barriers around Monte Carlo, and if you really felt at one with your car, you were quick here.
Well, it is a tremendous event. The grid just beginning to clear of so many celebrities who have gathered here to enjoy the sunshine and the moment before the start of the race itself. And what a qualifying session we enjoyed yesterday. No sign of the clouds that we had that certainly made it very exciting. The first session of qualifying ended up with Paul di Resta, for example, way down the grid, much further than we would have expected. But through it all came Nico Rosberg to take pole position yet again. He's on a real run of great qualifying performances. But let's take a look at how the rest of them line up around him. So it's Nico Rosberg on pole position, but alongside is his own teammate Lewis Hamilton. Mercedes hoping for better things than last time out. It's Red Bull on the second row with Sebastian Vettel, championship leader, in third, and Mark Webber lining up in fourth place. Then Kimi Raikkonen is fifth. He's second in the points, of course, and Fernando Alonso is sixth on the grid. Sergio Perez is seventh on the grid with Adrian Sutil. Mercedes Power as well in his Force India in eighth. Jenson Button is ninth, and Jean-Eric Vergne, great effort from him, best qualifying performance of his career, in 10th. Nico Hülkenberg is 11th. Daniel Ricciardo in the other Toro Rosso is 12th, and then we've got Romain Grosjean, who should have been further up the grid than that, so keep an eye on him in the race. Valtteri Bottas is 14th for Williams. Guido van der Garde, excellent effort by the Dutchman in the Caterham, 15th ahead of Pastor Maldonado. Then we've got Paul di Resta, 17th, Charles Pic, the Frenchman, 18th in the second of the two Caterhams, and then Esteban Gutierrez in the Sauber. Marussia had a tough day. Bianchi didn't set a time. He had an airbox fire, change of engine. Felipe Massa had a crash in morning practice, never set a time in qualifying, and Chilton's at the back, having taken a 5-place grid penalty. So that's how the grid lines up then. The two Mercedes on the front row, and everybody wondering if they're going to be able to stay there this time, because of course last time out in Spain they started up front. The best they got out of it was 6th for Nico Rosberg, and of course Lewis Hamilton dropped right out of the points. What do you reckon, David? Are Mercedes going to be able to control the race here? We're overtaking.
Fell off the edge of the earth with their performance in the race, so this has to be their best chance. Rosberg has to be the man that, presuming he gets to the first corner first, can rely on his teammate to, well, hold the field and allow him to open out a small gap. I've got to believe that Mercedes are going to work strategically and apply team orders.
Well, we saw Sebastian Vettel, of course. He lines up in third place on the grid, the best of the rest, and if they can pull some kind of different strategy, perhaps they have got a chance of Vettel or Webber indeed from that second row of the grid coming through. And let's not forget that Kimi Raikkonen with the Lotus has very good tyre wear. Remember how he did a pit stop less than everybody else in the streets of Melbourne, a different type of track, a track where you can overtake a bit more than Monaco. But do not discount Kimi Raikkonen from this race, because he has a great car. Fernando Alonso as well. Seeing if we were going to listen into a bit of Paul di Resta there. He's starting all the way down in 17th place on the grid, of course, but his teammate Adrian Sutil in the top 10. So third time he's been in the top 10 on the grid this year, but he's been a bit out of luck so far this season. It was a cross-threaded wheel nut that accounted for him last time. Well, it dropped him out of the points anyway. The tyres being used this weekend are the Super Soft and the Soft. So the top 10 will be starting on the Super Soft tyre, and the guys outside the top 10, well, we'll just have a look and see. Ricciardo and Grosjean are going to start on the soft tyre. Nico Rosberg leads the field away then on the start of the formation lap, And let's just check that everybody gets away. I think they are going to move away safely. Mercedes 1-2 on the grid, Red Bull 3 and 4, as Nico Rosberg tries to become the first son of a father who's won here in the past to do the same this year. Sebastian Vettel leading the championship from Kimi Raikkonen and Fernando Alonso. Gary, I know that you're thinking this is either a 1 or 2 stop race. Problems there for Jules Bianchi at the back again. He had problems in qualifying. Let's hope Marussia can get him going. I know you're thinking 1 or 2 stops is the most likely, but what about Mercedes trying to split their strategy perhaps between the 2 cars up front?
Yeah, I think we have to make those decisions after the start, just see how it all unfolds. If they can keep position that they're in now, then after a couple of laps we'll sort of look at it and see who made a good start, who didn't. If Fernando Alonso can get up into 3rd, or Kimi Raikkonen, for example, they know that the Ferrari and the Lotus is so good on the tyres that they'll be going for a 1 stop. That's the point in time where you need to start and make the different decisions.
Bianchi's being pushed into the pit lane, so it's just it's turning into a bit of a nightmare for him. He comes from Nice, not far away. He actually lives in Marseille at the moment, but along the south coast, he knows it well, but things not going well. Just to come back to you, Gary, quickly, I mean, we haven't seen a safety car period at all this year, but it's an 80% chance of having one here. Now, how would that affect the strategy? For example, if we had an early one?
There was a lot of clutch slip. Yep, copy that, Jensen. We're looking into it.
Jensen just saying there's a lot of clutch slip. Obviously on the start line, that's the last thing you need. You have to be so precise with the clutch to get the car away but not have too much wheel spin. So the clutch itself has to be working very, very well.
So what about safety car?
Yeah, safety car, I mean, you know, anything can happen here. We've seen it in the other races we've had this weekend. It's as you say, 80% chance, but you can't go into the race banking on it. You have to make sure you make a plan that doesn't require the safety car, and then you have to be alive and work on it from there.
Great, well the cars making their way around the last few corners now. The tight Rascasse corner, the restaurant on the inside, and then up through the Antonino corner. Look at that sky, absolutely cloudless. It is beautiful. Air temperature 18 degrees, but what's more important to the teams is that the track temperature is 42 degrees, and that will bring the tyres into their working temperature. On board with Alonso as he begins to line himself up, of course involved in an incident at the start last year. Quickly run you through that grid once again. It's Rosberg, Hamilton up front, Vettel and Webber, Raikkonen and Alonso on row 3, Perez and Sutil on row 4, then Button and Verne, Hulkenberg and Ricciardo on row 6, Grosjean and Bottas on row 7, Van der Garde and Maldonado on row 8. Row 9, we've got Di Resta and Charles Pic, then Gutierrez. Bianchi's not on the grid. Then we've got Massa at the back, remember, with Chilton.
Long time Rosberg's been sitting on the grid. Unlike Barcelona, he brought them round very quickly, and he's having to wait for the stragglers to line up.
So, here we go. Nico Rosberg has won 1 Grand Prix in his career. That was in China last year. But can he do it on the streets where he grew up, where he went to school on these streets every day as a child? Lights out, away we go in Monaco. The 2 Mercedes get away, but the Red Bull of Sebastian Vettel charging side by side into the first corner. Rosberg gets ahead, Hamilton slots into 2nd place. Now, does everybody else make it? I think that was Van der Garde cutting the first corner. Now, he might get away with that as long as he doesn't take advantage, but Rosberg has got the clean getaway that he needed.
It seems like Hamilton dutifully allowed Rosberg to come back through on the inside. A really poor start there initially from Rosberg. Look at Vettel trying to get around the outside. That won't work at Mirabel. Will he go for the inside at Lowe's? Hamilton's blocking, defensive already. And Rosberg, I think, has to be thankful it's as short as the contact.
Sutil has hit the back of the McLaren.
And now behind as well, the Caterham has lost its nose.
Well, drama already. I think that was Button's car that Sutil hit. Perez is ahead in 7th place, so it's Button in 8th that he hit. And as you say, Lewis Hamilton is already trying to hold up the field by the looks of things, because Rosberg's getting away. Raikkonen ahead of Alonso, and that's Perez across the
There was contact between the McLaren drivers there as Jenson Button was trying to find his way down the inside. And just to finish on the Rosberg at the start, it's only 100 metres from this pole position to the first corner. Had that been a normal run to the first corner, he would have lost 2 places. So opening out a slight gap here at the end of the first lap.
Well, we gather there might be some pit activity coming up here, some damage from a few cars, but it's Rosberg who leads. Hamilton in 2nd, Vettel is 3rd, Webber 4th, Raikkonen 5th, Alonso is in 6th position, and yeah, we've definitely got a Williams into the pits. It's Maldonado, Pastor Maldonado, who crashed and took off the front wing at the beginning of the race last year. Unfortunately, he's done front wing damage straight away this year.
Well, he's been followed in by Van der Garde and the Caterham, so it was his, after a fairly good qualifying, not a good first lap as Van der Garde comes into, is it a nose change there?
Let's take a look at the incident further back here. This was, that was Sutil over the curb, and then, that was, Van der Garde running into the back, was it?
Yeah, he went up and launched over the back of the Williams.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, just a bit of over-eagerness there, and that's what no front downforce looks like. You just lock up.
What a shame for Van der Garde after his best qualifying performance in his short Formula 1 career. The 28-year-old Dutchman in trouble now. So Rosberg leads from Hamilton. Vettel is desperate to get past Hamilton. Look at him going one way, then the other. Hamilton, though, just holding his ground as he's permitted to do. Mercedes are definitely working this one to Rosberg's advantage. They're trying to get Rosberg to break free of the opposition. They know the threat that's coming from Red Bull.
Well, interestingly, though, Rosberg is trying to be really careful on the tyres initially. That would be costing him a lot more time normally, with Hamilton weaving around to try and hold Vettel in place. So Rosberg trying to get the maximum life he can get out of these tyres. It's a long shot for them to be able to one-stop this afternoon.
Alonso on the attack behind. He's lining up Raikkonen, or trying to at least. You see the Ferrari in the back of the shot. He's running in 6th position as they flash up the hill. Then you've got Perez in 7th, who's just set a very quick lap there. Button is in 8th place, riding on board here with Fernando Alonso through Casino Square. Over the little bump there and down towards Mirabeau, steeply downhill under braking, very tight into the right-hander, but then the tightest corner in Formula 1, the Lowe's hairpin.
Well, no way through there. Raikkonen just taking the middle ground as he ran into Lowe's. So Raikkonen just settling in for the long haul. He's got probably the best tyre degradation from free practice. So the Lotus, if anyone can one-stop this afternoon, you've got to expect that they will, unless, of course, they find a window, a little gap in the traffic. Once we get 20 laps or so into this Grand Prix, we may start seeing some pit action.
Yellow flags down there.
I think it's for debris from the incident earlier, I believe, Ben.
Okay, radio message from Jenson Button. Let's just take a look as we're riding on board here with the Red Bull of Sebastian Vettel, chasing after Lewis Hamilton. Yeah, Button's been saying about his teammate Perez, he's got to stop turning in on me, guys. Well, you're trying to get past in Monaco. Nobody's going to make it easy for you, including your own teammate. Perez currently 7th. Button is in 8th place. I can tell you, by the way, that Daniel Ricciardo's the first of the cars on soft tyres. He is down in 13th place, chased by Romain Grosjean.
Definitely Rosberg here playing the long game. He's only done a 23.7 last lap around, 23.5 for Hamilton. Given that Hamilton's having to drive defensively, that tells us that Nico Rosberg's holding back.
Second, just cut the chicane. He's got to stop turning in on me, guys. I know we're both teammates, but he cut the chicane when I was on the inside of him, taking position.
Well, it started early this week, hasn't it? The Jenson Button Sergio Perez story, saying that he cut the chicane as well. So we'll watch that one closely. I can tell you that both Maldonado, by the way, and Van der Garde are back on track, so all cars are still running. And Maldonado, in clear air, just to prove you right, has done a 1:21.9. So that's the sort of, these guys should be going quicker than that, 1:21. But Rosberg's only doing 1:23. So he really is protecting his tyres.
Just trying to nurse these tyres, try and get as much as he can out of it this afternoon. And just on the Button and Perez, there's nothing like becoming teammates to spoil a beautiful relationship when they were buddies before.
Interestingly, on Thursday in practice, when they were running their full tanks, they were running about 1:19 and 1:20. So we know that that kind of pace they're capable of doing, but they're not doing it. They're just a little bit off that at this stage. So we'll keep an eye on that. Rosberg leads by just under a second from Hamilton, then Vettel and Webber as they climb up the hill. Kimi Raikkonen is in 5th place. And he's just drawn away a bit from Alonso on this lap. There's Perez, Button chasing. Behind Button, you've got Adrian Sutil and Jean-Eric Vergne. Hulkenberg runs 11th. Bottas is 12th in his first ever race at Monaco, let alone his first Grand Prix. Ricciardo 13th. Grosjean is in 14th place. Di Resta, who started 17th, is down in 15th. And Jenson Button now becoming a bit of a target here for Adrian Sutil and that whole group of cars lined up behind. So Perez has been able to make a little bit of a breakaway here. Now, let's take a look at the start, David.
Well, you see Rosberg just bogs down off the line. Vettel tries to kink out, just no room. Hamilton on the outside. Yeah, just didn't get cleanly away. The reaction time of all the drivers looked about the same. And then you can see Hamilton, well, I dare say if that was another situation, he might have tried to run it around the outside. This is the concertina effect. Grosjean would have been extremely nervous after all the crashes he's had this weekend. Virtually stopped down at the first corner, and then that was Vettel down at Mirabel, and then you see the action between the two McLaren boys, Button on the outside in that case, and that ran all the way to the chicane.
So Rosberg continuing to pull away just a little bit, 1.1 seconds the gap. DRS is enabled, it is operative on that start-finish straight, or curve as it is really, but it's very, very difficult, even using DRS, to overtake, of course, on this circuit. They're still on full tanks of fuel, making it even more difficult. Down at the back, the Caterham of Van der Garde and Maldonado in his Williams are still the fastest cars on track.
Max, we need a lap time of mid-23s, a lap time of mid-23s.
So there you are.
Jules, Max has been told to speed up. If he doesn't, we'll do something about it.
So that's interesting. Bianchi in his Marussia is behind Chilton, his teammate, by just 0.4 of a second. So those two teammates are obviously having a bit of a discussion as well.
They are. That information must have been from a couple laps ago, because he's actually done a 22.7, so he's surpassed what the instructions from his engineer to actually achieve out there on track. And anyway, that presumably had Bianchi on the radio saying, I can go faster.
So Hamilton not dropping away too much. It's not as though he's actually trying to stack them all up miles behind Rosberg. He's not giving up on his chance of winning this race, by the looks of things, of course. Long way to go yet before we get to determine what pit strategy they'll be choosing. Another point, just to emphasise how slowly Rosberg is driving. 22.3 last time around. Max Chilton 22.7. Gutierrez 22.8. You know, most of the field are in and around the sort of times that our race leaders doing, so he's strategically just trying to eke things out. Fuel level about 130 kilos when they go off the line. It's only about 1.7 kilos of fuel use, and this is the incident with Button and Perez. And Button, if you remember, said, look, I know we're teammates, but he missed the chicane. And then, well, in fairness, you know, he does have a point. He is turning in on him. And he's also, it hasn't let him pass where he's had to cut. Usually, if you gain any advantage by going straight through, you have to let the car behind past you. So, not quite sure what's going on there. Well, we'll wait to see if there's any signals about that. But McLaren presumably have felt that he can stay there for the moment. Haven't asked him to give the place up. He's still in 7th place, Sergio Perez. But you're looking at Kimi Raikkonen with his tribute to James Hunt on the top of his crash helmet. Lots of special crash helmets here this weekend. Well, I was at a function last night up at the Palace, and I saw, met for the first time, I should say, James Hunt's second son, who, being much shorter than James, but eerily like his face, so that was slightly unusual. But anyway, he apparently teamed up with Kimi to help promote the legacy that was James Hunt. He was a fantastic driver, and of course someone I grew up listening to on the BBC. Yes, indeed, the 1976 world champion, and much missed. Now down through Saint-Devote as Kimi Raikkonen keeps that gap to Mark Webber, just 0.7 of a second on the last lap. Still 1:22 from our race leader. Just ride with him through into Casino Square, past the Hotel de Paris on the left. You can have a room over the balcony there, looking down over the track, but you have to have 4 nights stay, and it'll cost you 25,000 euros for those 4 nights. That doesn't include breakfast, though, Ben. Well, that's good, I'm glad about that. So down the hill into Poitiers they're coming now, and alongside the Mediterranean, of course, and into the tunnel, the famous tunnel here. The two Red Bulls, nothing to choose between them. Red Bull have dominated this race in the last few years. They're looking for a 4th win in a row. Vettel and Webber still very much in the hunt here, but they've got to do something about those Mercedes up ahead of them. And again, yeah, you're just pointing out fastest lap for Maldonado, just to prove how steady these guys are going. Maldonado, 1.5 seconds faster in his Williams in clear air than these guys are doing up front. Well, that's the confidence you have, that no one's going to find a way past you. Normally on a typical circuit like Barcelona, if you're a 1.5 seconds or so faster, then you will find a way past, especially with the use of DRS. DRS on this front straight here, but as we get the camera angle, you can see it's not straight at all. It curves its way all the way down to the first corner of Saint-Devote. So Webber still fending off Kimi Raikkonen. Raikkonen looking pretty racy at this stage, but not prepared, I wouldn't think, to take any gambles. Alonso a bit further back. Perez is getting closer to Alonso. Button ahead of Sutil, maybe just looking after his tyres as much as possible at this stage of the race. Jean-Eric Verne.
Okay, Mark, the gaps are not opening. The gaps are not opening. We need to look at after these tyres. Recommend a 2-second gap. Look after the tyres. Recommend a 2-second gap. Okay, mate.
Okay,
and Charles Pic in trouble. What's happened here? Has he hit something, or?
No, there's an engine fire, it looks like.
Yeah. The fire coming from the right-hand side. The marshal's quick on the scene.
And that's just at the entrance to the pit lane, so that'll get cleared up quite quickly. I wouldn't expect we need a safety car for that. They'll just push it away. Marshals are pretty efficient here. And just to come on that message to Mark Webber, they're saying the gap's not opening up. That means there's not a window for them to try and stop early, do a two-stop and get into some clean air. So when they're telling him to look after the tyres, that's telling Mark, well, look, we've got to try and do a one-stop here this afternoon.
So yellow flags in the area where Charles Pic's car is parked as the leaders come through. It's still Rosberg in front, getting quite a lot of smoke, but thankfully it's not affecting the vision of the drivers. Charles Pic heading back down to the pits. Disappointing weekend for him. It hasn't been a good start to the day for Caterham. And that was a pit stop.
Yeah, Force India heading for the pits.
Let's just take a look at this again, David. He was slowing down. Obviously knew he was in trouble.
Yeah, well, picked up whatever that engine issue was.
Yeah, the engine was sounding very rough as he went past the back of the pits, apparently, and then he couldn't make it into the pits. Nearly made it.
Yeah, he did a good effort in trying to get back, which is absolutely fair of him. It wouldn't have done much good to the engine, but you don't want to have a car stopped on track.
It was Di Resta who's been in, by the way. Paul Di Resta's been into the pits, and he's back out on a set of soft tyres. So let's get back down to Tom in the pits now.
Absolutely right, he went out on the soft tyres, so we're looking at a two-stop strategy from Force India and Di Resta. That was, funnily enough, I was only a couple of laps earlier going to dial you guys up and say all calm down here in pit lane, and I was also just going to tell you why Maldonado found himself in so much free air. It's because when he came in to have his nose replaced, there was an issue on the front right of his car, and the team, having dropped the jack, then had to jack him back up, and he lost about 5 seconds. So that's why he's in so much free air, and we're seeing what the super soft tyre can do.
Great, thanks for that, Tom. Leaders coming past the incident, which the marshals are moving out of the way. Rosberg, lap 10 completed, 1.5 seconds the gap back to Lewis Hamilton. Then it's Vettel a further 2 seconds behind in third position. Mark Webber is in fourth. Fifth place for Kimi Raikkonen in the Lotus. Further back you can see Fernando Alonso, 6th place for him in the Ferrari. Now Jenson Button is ahead of Perez. I wonder if Perez was told to give that place up, because Button now ahead of Perez. Soutel is still in 9th place and Verne in 10th.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. He definitely missed the chicane at the exit of the tunnel, and he missed the chicane here just after the swimming pool. So any one of those would be enough to have to give back the position.
Now we can just see the two McLarens coming through and queued up behind them. You've got Hulkenberg at the back of that little group. He's in 11th place. Then I think there's a 1.5 second gap back to Valtteri Bottas, who's running 12th. Ricciardo is 13th.
Alonso's pace is not very good. Let's see if we can put him under some pressure.
So Button being asked to put Alonso under pressure, but I wonder whether Alonso is not just playing the long game here. Last year Ferrari had a chance of victory with hindsight, because he'd looked after his tyres so well leading up to the first pit stop, but when the others made their pits he was blindingly quick and could perhaps have gained more places than he did. So you do wonder whether Alonso's just playing the long game here.
Well, 9 seconds down on the leader, that would be scary on any other year, but this one, where it seems that once the tyres do hit the cliff, you just lose massive amounts. But we'll find out soon. Button, if he's well, been given the message there to push on with it, so maybe Button's mentally committed to a two-stop this afternoon.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. And yes, we gather that Sergio Perez was told to give the place to Button. The stewards deciding that he had gained advantage, so Button has got the place, but now he finds himself trapped up behind Alonso. Fernando Alonso using a different crash helmet as well this weekend. It's got a more gold coloured pattern, and it's a jigsaw pattern in fact, marking all of his race wins, his 32 race victories.
Try second gear in the chicane, try second gear in the chicane, full tyre saving again. Keep thinking about saving the tyres. I think we have to go longer than the target.
Well, he would have been using first gear, and it would just spin up the rear tyres, and they'll be able to see from the telemetry that the rear surface of the tyres, or the rear tyre surface I should say, getting beyond optimal. And using second gear, you just reduce the available torque and the RPM, and it'll just take a bit of heat out of the surface.
Let's get back to Tom in the pits.
Well guys, just while you're talking about gears, I thought it was worth mentioning that the reason Bianchi stopped on the grid grid and couldn't get himself away is because he found himself in the wrong gear and he stalled the car. So that's why they had to push him off, and he's now running second last of the guys who haven't stopped. So that was his problem.
Okay, thank you. He is still running behind his teammate Max Chilton. Chilton running in 17th. And of course, with the problems for Caterham, it means that Marussia are leading Caterham in this race at the moment. Van der Garde is still going after that early pit stop, but he is the last runner. And we've just lost the one car after the fire for Charles Pic. This is the one car retired so far. We're on lap 13 out of 78. Still very much the early stages of what Mark Webber calls a game of chess. Long, long way to go in this race to determine what will happen. But you have to say Mercedes are doing the job well. Their lap times, David, are nice and consistent up front. Not the fastest, because the fastest has just become Paul di Resta.
Well, fresh set of tyres on Paul di Resta. And yeah, very consistent times from Rosberg. He's been just very comfortably sitting in the mid-22s. And just got himself a 2-second gap over Hamilton. He'd want to have that, if he wasn't his teammate, he'd want to have that out to at least 4 or 5 seconds, just to be comfortable that if your main competitors head for the pits, they're not going to be able to jump you by putting on fresh tyres. Quite a wide line there for Webber as he goes through the first part of Rascasse. And then the last turn here, out onto the start-finish straight. DRS, as you can see, not having any effect whatsoever on this circuit, and it rises up into Saint-Devoux before this big climb up to Casino Square.
Now, interestingly, Vettel has dropped back a bit in third, so Mercedes maintaining a pace. I guess maybe Vettel's trying to look after his tyres rather than fighting them at this point, but very difficult to read which cars are most competitive. Massa started this race, remember, right at the back of the field, having crashed in practice and never setting a lap in qualifying. Now, he went out on the started the race on the soft tyre, and Ferrari are already telling him they're going to target a very deep stop in this race and then be putting him on the super softs at the end. Chance still of Massa getting into the points by the end of this race. You know, he started at the back here in 2006 after a qualifying accident, and he finished 9th that day. His teammate on that occasion, Michael Schumacher, started in the pits and finished 5th. That was really quite a comeback drive from him. So it is possible, if you play the strategy right, but you do usually need to make a few moves on track as well to get those kind of results.
Yeah, the field here this afternoon extremely bunched up as we're on the 14th lap of this race. You go down all the way to 16th place Massa. He's only 20 seconds off the lead. So again, it's normally by the end of the first lap, the guys running around in 21st, 22nd would be at least 20 seconds behind because of the spread that's inevitably there when you stick a second between each car. And it's about, could this be one of the slowest starts to a Monaco Grand Prix?
It's about 20 seconds too, isn't it, for the pit stop by the time you've been in, changed the wheels and out. So as you say, top 16 cars covered by a pit stop at the moment. Look how bunched that lot are. Alonso chased by Button, Perez, Sutil, Verne, Hulkenberg. There's Valtteri Bottas, Ricciardo. You just saw Grosjean flash through the shot. Remember that Ricciardo and Grosjean are the leading drivers on the soft, not the super soft. So it's the harder of the two compounds of tyre. They will be going deeper than all of the cars around them. They just have to sit there patiently and hope that things will open up for them a bit later on. At the moment, it's not looking too bad because of the grouping. They are within that 20-second group, but things will change before we get to the first pit stop, I'm sure. Rosberg continues to lead up front by 1.6 seconds from Hamilton.
Well, interestingly, we're seeing a message up here on the commentary box that Rosberg has been asking for advance notice when he needs to speed up, because it's not going to be easy, he's saying. So he's driving conservatively, but he's obviously getting feedback from the balance of the car that isn't telling him that he can just then suddenly turn on and deliver another couple of seconds of lap time.
Let's ride with Alonso here. Just listen to the power as he comes down the start-finish area, and he's still just, I think, judging this beautifully at the moment to look after his tyres, but of course he is further down than he would like. His main objective, I think, today will be to try and beat Raikkonen and Vettel, his closest championship contenders, if you like, at the moment. But Alonso's pace, as you can see, has been slightly off the pace of the Mercedes up front over the last few laps, and he's being caught by Jenson Button, no doubt about it. Jenson getting that little closer as they brake hard down into Mirabeau. Twisty section down into the Lowe's hairpin. You're riding on board with Jenson Button. Tiny lock-up, but that won't be a problem.
No, it's just that hangs the inside wheel.
So your pace management is very good. We're happy with the gaps that we're creating.
So far, so good for Mercedes.
It sounded like he wasn't flat through the tunnel. That's interesting. It used to pretty much be flat on any given day and any given fuel load, apart from in the wet. So really trying to take energy out, you know, the load they put in the tyres there, because it really scrubs the front left.
That is the highest G on this track, isn't it? But it is normally, as you say, a flat-out corner. So that is perhaps what he's doing to protect those tyres. So let's just watch them through. Perez is still behind him. And then you've got Adrien Sutil and Jean-Eric Vergne. There is the Frenchman. Jean-Eric Vergne, by the way, using a crash helmet, paying tribute to a former French Grand Prix driver, François Sévère. So the colours of his crash helmet are almost identical to François Sévère, who was tragically killed in a Formula One practice accident in 1973 when he was due to take over the leadership of the Tyrrell Formula One team. He was a teammate to Jackie Stewart as Jackie went into retirement. But Vergne himself doing a good job at the moment in that 10th place and prospectively getting some points here. Hulkenberg outside the top 10, and then Bottas doing okay on his first ever run at Monaco.
Interestingly, Alonso, fastest first sector of the Grand Prix so far, just matched the lap time of a race leader Rosberg. So it does look that Alonso, has been strategically sort of saving the tyres, dropping back into clean air. He's got a 4-second window to Raikkonen. We see them now coming through the chicane, but he has started to up the pace now. He must be feeling that he's burned off some fuel, taking the edge off the surface of the tyre, and he can start to exploit the performance of that Ferrari car now.
We're getting into the window for a two-stop. If you're going to make it your first of two stops, then we are getting into that window. Maybe that's what he's thinking. In terms of driving technique, David, if you're being told to drive to a certain pace, how do you do that actually from a driver's point of view? What are you doing inside the cockpit?
Well, the easiest thing, of course, is to brake early. Most of the lap time that these exceptional drivers will gain is in the braking zone. It's not about really how early you get on the power. Of course, you don't want to be late in the throttle, but the main lap time is on the entry phase. So they just take out a huge amount of energy by rolling off the throttle and then braking gently. That saves you some fuel as well. And they systematically sort of under-fuel the cars, if you like, to try and make them as light as possible. They don't have any issue with being anywhere near full tanks around here. As I said earlier, only about 1.7 kilos of fuel burned every lap. And at this stage of the Grand Prix, well, the cars will be getting more and more nimble.
So there's Nico Rosberg, race leader for Mercedes from pole position. Tom, what have you got for us?
Well, I'm just going to pick up on David's fascinating point that he picked up earlier. Jensen backing off through the tunnel, perhaps to save tyres, because we're seeing the highest track temperature that we've seen all weekend so far, 43 degrees. And it makes you it's quite similar to Bahrain and Spain, and we saw how Mercedes fell backwards at those races. So, you know, with Rosberg saying over the radio that it might be hard for him to push, it just could be, as the track temperatures go up, he's going to struggle more. It's going to play into the hands of the Ferrari and the Lotus in particular.
We'll keep an eye on that, and we're also watching the rear tyres on Alonso's car, because there's evidence of a bit of graining on the rear of Alonso's car.
Well, that's one of the hardest things around this track as we join our race leader here. Look at this hand having to come off this traditional position on the steering to get full lock. And this looks like a Sunday drive. Well, I know it's Sunday, but in comparison to Formula One, let's listen in the tunnel. Well, it sounded flat to me, but how early is he on the brakes here? So, well, this is a lot of debate about whether the drivers are really exploiting 100% of the potential on every given lap, and I think that's a clear example. As Rosberg's got the lead opening out ever so slightly over Hamilton, that clearly they're not having to push 100% at this phase of the race.
So nobody quite knows what the game is as yet, but everybody's still intrigued to see what's going on. Mercedes running 1 and 2, Red Bull 3 and 4, the Lotus of Kimi Raikkonen in 5th, the Ferrari of Alonso in 6th place. What progress, you might ask, of Felipe Massa, who started at the back? He's still down in 16th place, and he's now dropped to nearly 25 seconds off the lead. But remember, he is on the harder of the two compounds of tyre. and so hopefully things might come together for him a little bit later in the race in terms of getting points, but that's all really Massa can target today. There's not much chance of him repeating his podium finish of last time out in Spain. There you are, the two Mercedes through the shot, then the two Red Bulls not that close to one another at this point. Raikkonen isn't far away. Then you just saw Alonso briefly. Perez has now set the fastest first sector time of anybody, but it's still Paul di Resta, who's down in 17th place, having made a pit stop, who has got the fastest lap in the race so far at a 1 minute 20.209, which he set on the newer tyres, of course. Out of the chicane they come, past the boats that are moored. Just the boats on that section of track just have to be pushed away from the harbour edge during the race. They can then back them up again during the evening frivolities, and there were plenty of those, I'm sure, on the boats last night. But everybody now eyes on this motor race as Rosberg still has things under control. Lewis Hamilton chasing, still, David, not perhaps 100% at home in a Mercedes car as opposed to a McLaren car, which he's driven for so long.
Yeah, it does seem that Nico Rosberg is showing the benefit of his experience of the Mercedes team. And Lewis, we know, has great natural speed. But Nico just, this weekend certainly, has well, been top of every session. And he's leading the Grand Prix. Lewis looking very much like he's having to concede to Nico's experience, not only of the track, having lived here, I suppose, for so long, but just the superior knowledge of the car and how to manage the various, you know, strengths and weaknesses of the Mercedes car.
Okay, Nico, so just starting to ramp the pace up, targeting -0.4 delta time. Not immediate, but over the next few laps.
It all sounds very controlled at the moment, doesn't it?
It sounds wrong. This is Formula One. They should be gunning it every lap. No, let's just very ever so gently build the pace here. We're in a motor race.
Yeah, that's the way they have to be this year, and certainly they are managing it at this point. Lewis Hamilton, a former winner of this race in 2008 when it was a wet and damp start. It was a brilliant victory by him, and despite hitting the barrier at Tabac and causing himself a puncture, he still came through to win the race that day. Interestingly though, he's not had a pole position, and of course he was defeated again by a teammate yesterday. He was defeated, last time he was on the front row was when he was teammate to Fernando Alonso. So as much as he loves this place, does Lewis Hamilton, he's yet to get that coveted pole position here, but I'm sure he's not giving up on a potential win here. There's a long way to go and plenty of mistakes can be made.
Yeah, we're hearing that Lewis has been told to ramp up the pace as well. Target lap time of 1:20.9. Well, just done 21.1 last time around, as we get slow-mo of the tyre vibrating off the curbs at the high-speed chicane at the swimming pool.
It's a lovely shot there,
most
isn't it?
Most of your suspension travel is in the sidewall of the tyres.
And Rosberg just, last lap was at 1:21.1. We'll keep an eye on those lap times just to see how much quicker he is able to push it. Down towards the chicane he comes once again. Crashed there a couple of years ago in qualifying, but does have a good record. Of course, he finished second here last year. He was frustrated throughout by following Mark Webber. Webber drove a brilliant race from what became pole position after Schumacher's demotion from fastest qualifying time, but Rosberg got that second place. But it's the last time that Nico finished on the podium, was here last year. Their season really went downhill after that. This year they're hoping to be able to maintain the updates and keep these cars running nearer the front. But of course he wants his first podium of the season. Hamilton's had a couple of podiums this year, and Rosberg now absolutely focused on doing what the team says. A 1:21.0, so he was a fraction quicker than his previous best, and the two of them are pulling away 10th by 10th from the Red Bulls behind. Vettel is still in third and Webber in fourth. Now we are going to be seeing a couple of pit stops coming along now. Yes, Daniel Ricciardo is into the pits. So that's interesting, because Ricciardo on the soft tyre, he actually started this race on the harder of the two compounds of tyre. You can see the yellow writing on the sidewall. Not as long a stint as I would expect it. This may well be a two-stop race then for Daniel Ricciardo. He's gone on to the super softs, so a different strategy certainly from Toro Rosso to the race leaders here.
Very gentle down through the gears. The Mercedes tends to do late shifts. They don't use a lot of engine braking. We'll be harvesting the KERS, replenishing the power that they use when they push the button and gain an extra 80 horsepower for just under 7 seconds around the lap.
Beginning to see a few purple sector times coming up now. Vettel fast in the middle sector, Alonso fast in the first sector. So they are beginning to ramp up the speed just a little bit now as the leader completes 23 laps, goes on to lap number 24 here out of 78, but still a little bit off 1/3 distance. Now, what's been going on here at the chicane? Bianchi on the outside, that was Maldonado he was dicing with.
Broken his end plate, so Maldonado down the inside, bit late with that, it has to be said. And Marussia left him some space, but there was contact. Interestingly, Vettel more than half a second quicker that last time around than our race leader Rosberg, so he's got the gap down to 1.5 seconds. You can visibly see it there to Hamilton, and he's just 3.9 seconds behind our race leader.
Well, the timing screen saying that Bianchi is out of the pits. He's just been back into the pits and back out again, but clearly there must have been damage. That's Chilton, so Chilton's in for his stop and straight on his way once again. He was ahead of Bianchi, so hoping to continue that if he can. Now, how much longer can these Mercedes go before they come in? Last year, Mark Webber managed to get to lap 29 in the first stint of the race. Was helped a little bit by 2 laps of safety car. We've had no safety car as yet, but we have seen them managing their tyres very, very carefully. So can they get up to lap 30? If they can, then you've got to be thinking Mercedes are going for a one-stop, and it could well be that all of the leading contenders are trying to do that. And then it's a question of, can they make their tyres last right to the end of the race, or will they be in trouble in the last few laps? Webber now ramping up the pace. Mark Webber just going through the shot there, 119.7 for him, quite a lot quicker than those around him.
Yeah, it's just confirming what we've been watching. They've been running to a pace.
Okay, Nico, so we would like to up the pace again. We're just reacting to things around, so minus 0.5, not immediate, but just bring it up.
So,
okay, Lewis, we can pick up the pace a little bit more, target minus 0.6 on your dash.
you don't ever remember messages like this, do you?
No, I was always being told
I mean.
to go faster. Not, well, I know they're being told to go faster, but you know, we were going as fast as we could on every single lap, pretty much. You might have had a bit of graining on the groove tyres in those early days where you managed it, but other than that, all the slick running was you ran to the maximum pace that you could.
Now, interestingly, if Kimi Räikkönen were to come out now, he would come out probably ahead of Bottas in some clear air. Now, that's interesting because what the strategists are doing now is just trying to work out, if you make a pit stop, where will you come back out? Just saw Massa and Di Resta, by the way, going through the shot. They're battling away as Guido van der Garde makes what is his second pit stop, but the first one, of course, was for damage at the beginning of this race. There's Webber's in. Right, so Webber only going to lap 26 this time before making his pit stop. Now, that's early for a one-stop. He might be able to make the rest of the race on the second set of tyres, but it would be marginal. It may be that he's going to go for a two-stop and he comes back out. Tom, what have you got for us?
I'm just going to pick up on that point, Ben, that Mark, when he pitted last year on lap 29, so 3 laps later, he said that he had to nurse his tyres for 72 of the 78 laps. So, and with this extra bit, I think it's looking like a two-stop. I'm going to put my finger out there and say I think Webber is going to do a two-stop.
Di Resta's gone round Massa. Sorry to interrupt you there, Tom, but Di Resta's got past Felipe Massa, and I think that's probably the first overtaking manoeuvre we've seen on track today.
Well, fresher tyres on the Force India, and he's used that to good effect. Got the DRS zone and managed to go around the outside. Maybe not surprising that Felipe Massa, as he slides the rear and rides over the curb, that's where he had the incident in free practice, and I wasn't able to take part in qualifying, having hit the barriers on the left and then bounced into the barriers. Paul there using all of the curb on the exit.
That's put him up into 15th place.
McLaren mechanics are coming out, Ben, so we can expect one of the McLaren boys in soon.
And Lotus as well, they're getting ready for a car, and in comes Kimi. So Kimi Räikkönen is in the pits, there we are. So it's a pretty early stop, and he goes onto the soft tyre. Now, will he go all the way to the end? You know how good the Lotus is. They may well have gone for the early stop here with Lotus to then go all the way to the checker flag and be able to push.
Well, there's Webber's just gone through the shot, so you've got to say Räikkönen's lost out slightly in that round of stops. You'd say that he was, well, he's probably dropped back a second or so from where he was relative to Mark Webber. Mark making full use of those fresh tyres in his outlap. He was quickest of all in the second and third sector.
Yeah, but now Massa's in, and he's away on a set of super softs now, so he only did 27 laps on those soft tyres. Again, less than I would have expected to see, and maybe we are going to see more stops this year than in 2012. Just riding on board with the race leader here, Nico Rosberg, as Daniel Ricciardo is now recorded as having set the fastest lap of the race. Rosberg still leads from Hamilton. Vettel is in third. Will Mercedes respond? They're not responding, interestingly. They are resolutely sticking to what is a one-stop race, I think, for them, but others may be taking a different strategic choice. Hamilton still 2.6 seconds behind as they cross the line. Just see him in the background there, and a bit of traffic beginning to come up for them as well to deal with.
Oh, interestingly, Vettel is just keeping that gap just over a second behind Hamilton. It was, two tenths or so slower than both Rosberg and Hamilton that last time around. He may be looking for them to pit and then try and unleash a couple of quick laps before coming in himself. You can see one of the Saubers is into the pits as well. That's Hülkenberg.
So Nico Hülkenberg in from 11th place, as still the Mercedes in charge. Let's just watch Hülkenberg. Of course, he had an incident in the pit lane last time, but he's away, and that was Di Resta, I think. Was he side by side? Yeah, with Gutierrez. Di Resta's just passed Gutierrez down into Saint-Devote. He's done exactly what he did to Felipe Massa a moment ago. So Di Resta's definitely making some good overtaking manoeuvres here at this stage. And they're just watching Hülkenberg getting back up to speed here, as we're seeing Rosberg now. I wonder if we're going to be seeing any action from Mercedes yet. I don't think he's going to be coming in just yet. No, he stays out there. Gary, looks to me as though Mercedes are on a one-stop. What do you reckon? Yeah,
it looks to me the same thing. You know, all they've got to do now is look at their own lap times. If they're able to do the lap time ahead of the other guys around them, which they are, then just leave it alone. Every lap they can do now is a lap less on the next set of tyres.
Alonso is in, so he's now responding perhaps to Kimi Räikkönen. Now this is going to be important. Will he, I mean, he was behind Kimi, of course. I don't think he's going to have a chance of beating him as they come back out there.
Yeah, it looks like he might. There's Räikkönen. Let's look for the right now. Räikkönen's going to get back in front of him, so he maintains position, Ben.
Yeah, so he's just got to come through Saint-Devote, and he's in front of the Ferrari, so no change.
No change, yeah. It's one of those sort of things, you know, that was very, very close. And obviously, whenever Webber pitted, Räikkönen and Button had to respond to it, and now Alonso had to respond to it. But for Rosberg up front there, he's doing the right thing, you know. All depends on how his car works on the next set of tyres. But if he can tip this over past lap 30, he's got a lot less laps on that next set of tyres, which is going to be the critical ones.
Yeah, Gutierrez is in. I'm surprised, I don't know about you, Gary, the quite early stops from people like Ricciardo on the soft tyre, even Massa. It didn't get as long a stint as I thought they were going to.
No, you know, it's one of those things. I think, you know, at the end of the day, they're sort of trying to drive with a different race, and they know they're going to have to go to 2 stops, so they might as well do the best thing they can and try to drop into clear traffic. But I think whenever you're in that back bunch, you're really sort of struggling to do much out of it.
Well, it looks as though Sebastian Vettel's coming in. Hamilton's just gone fastest of it. Oh, and crashes Massa! Massa is out! Felipe Massa has crashed at Saint-Devote.
This might be a safety car. This might be a safety car. Let's see if they can get that removed.
In comes Hamilton for his pit stop from 2nd place.
No, that's not. That's the McLaren. That's the wrong graphic on there. That was Perez.
Right, that was Perez. Yep, sorry. Hamilton is still out there in 2nd place. Fastest lap he set, so Perez, confusing me there, going back a year or two as he comes through. And look at the debris. Look at the debris they're all trying to avoid from Felipe Massa's accident. Double waved yellow flags there as Jenson Button climbs back up the hill there. And Massa, for the 2nd time this weekend then, crashing heavily by the looks of things at Saint-Devote. Let's see how it happened, David.
Yeah, it's going to be... Let's wait for this. Locks up very early once again. That's almost a repeat of what he had in free practice. And, well, very strange indeed. Locked up the front axle. Well, they said it was driver error in free practice. If you told me that he'd had a ride height issue or something when he hit the brakes there, I would believe it. That was very unusual.
Yeah, that was odd to completely repeat what he did in the practice session. Now, what a Red Bull. We've got Red Bull in. Sebastian Vettel then for his tyre change now. Webber, of course, has already made his pit stop. He goes back out on a set of the yellow soft tyre. Safety car is out. Safety car has been deployed. as Sebastian Vettel makes his pit stop. Now, this is going to be interesting. Of course, they all have to stick to a safety car time, and they'll all be sort of following each other around, but this could have a very interesting effect. Rosberg, where is Rosberg? Surely he'll be coming in on this lap, but he's down at Mirabeau at the moment. He's quite a long way away from the pit lane as Sutil makes his pit stop. Sutil now heading back out onto the circuit. So safety car has picked up the Red Bull there of Vettel, I think it is, as they head on up the hill towards Casino Square. Gary, this is a very interesting time for the safety car to be out. Felipe Massa obviously somewhat injured too. He's out of the car and okay, I think, but it looks as though he could be a bit sore, and they're taking some precautions. Romain Grosjean has been into the pits.
Well, the problem now really for Rosberg and Hamilton is they're losing the time they had, the advantage they had, because they've got to drive now at the pace the safety car allows you to, and that can be a big thing. I mean, they just went past the pits. They shouldn't really have done that, because we saw Massa's accident. Their likelihood of a safety car was very, very high, so they could just have thrown this one away, I'm afraid.
Whoa, it's going to be interesting to see. Rosberg and Hamilton yet to make their pit stops. Now, cars are being waved past the safety car. There we are then, into the pits. Do you think they're going to double stack? I wonder. No, I think Hamilton has stayed out there. Rosberg is in for a new set of tyres then. They've got to lap 31, but Hamilton is in. Okay, they are doing both on the same lap. Of course, the gap between them had to stay the same as they stick to this safety car speed, different to the old days where you could race back to the pits under safety car, and away goes Lewis Hamilton. Now, where is that going to put them back out? Let's just see. Cars coming over the line. There goes Webber, coming out behind Webber then. And so Rosberg rejoins the fray, and Hamilton rejoins.
Yeah, Rosberg just got out just in front of Sebastian Vettel, so Hamilton joins in fourth. So Rosberg just about made it there, so a lucky break, I have to say. But now the race is on again.
Yeah, absolutely. So Rosberg did, as you say, get out in front. Are they being waved through or not? This is causing some confusion as Romain Grosjean wonders whether he can go past. Let's just see once again. This was the accident of Felipe Massa.
It's just a copybook of Thursday, you know, or Friday, Saturday morning, sorry. You know, I can't understand why, you know, I couldn't understand him having one of them, but to having two of them, I mean, that is unbelievable.
Very, very strange, shaking their heads from Ferrari as well. Tom, what have you got for us?
Well, I just wanted to add a little bit of information about that Massa accident, because he said after the accident in free practice that as he hit the brakes, there's a bump there, and the front tyres were actually off the ground. They then locked, and that put him into the barrier on the left, and it appears to have been the same case here. Now, he had a very stiff neck after the shunt yesterday, and he actually couldn't turn it properly when I saw him this morning, so that's probably why they're taking precautions, because that's certainly, he actually went in sideways this time, which really would have wrenched those neck muscles.
Remember, 10 car lengths beyond safety car, 10 car lengths. And remember, safety car line 1 rule, no overtaking before that line.
The difficulty, as I say, they have here is brake temps will probably be down at 400 or 500 degrees. As you can see, the medical car is still there, ready to pick up Felipe Massa.
It's the first time the medical car, of course, has been deployed this year as well, and the new medical boss, Dr. Ian Roberts, who looks after the safety of the drivers, the health of the drivers, first time that he's been deployed in a race. And, well, thankfully it looks as though Massa is basically okay. Let's listen in here.
When the safety car lights go out, you control the pace, okay? You control the pace when the safety car lights go out.
So a quick reminder to Nico that he will set the pace for everybody as they get ready for the restart here. And Rosberg just thinking about how he's going to plan this. I think that just looking at the tyre information, David, that interestingly Mercedes went for a scrubbed set of the soft tyre, whereas the cars behind, actually, they put a new set of the soft tyre, but similar number of laps really since they put them on the car, so I don't think that's going to make much difference, do you?
Well, what it will do is that it puts the tyres in a situation where the rubber's cured slightly, so it hardens. It loses a little bit of its peak performance, but it'll increase the durability. And with so much of this race to go, and with the desire to try and do a one-stop, that's a strategic decision there by Mercedes, that they were presuming that if they have track position, it won't matter if they don't have quite the ultimate pace from those tyres. Well, we'll find out in time whether Vettel's got enough pace, if he's going to be able to do anything with Rosberg ahead. Looks like safety car's going to be staying out for another lap or so. We'll see as we go down into Sainte Devote whether the medical car is still sitting there at the point of impact for Massa's Ferrari.
Yeah, Vettel, interesting watching Vettel a moment down at the chicane, wasn't he? Even though they were behind safety car, he was almost like exploring the inside line down there at the chicane, seeing how much dirt is down there. Do you reckon he's got a plan for the restart here?
They certainly will. This will be something. You can see they just cut inside the apex of turn 1 there, just to keep away from the debris and allow the marshals to do their thing. The drivers will have looked through previous events.
No. See what this is when Di Resta got past Gutierrez, I think, heading down into Sainte Devote.
Yeah, well, Gutierrez giving him plenty of space in the DRS zone, of course. So Paul, having made that early stop on a fresher set of tyres and getting on with it.
Yeah, good move that from Paul Di Resta, making up for the disappointment of qualifying yesterday when he was bang on the pace, but they left him out at intermediate tyres too long and they were worn out by the time the end of the session came, and it was really a mistake from the team that they didn't bring him in a bit earlier and put him onto a new set of intermediates. So lapped cars may now overtake, and of course this is a rule now that all lapped cars can basically get themselves out of the queue so that we end up with the real order of the race and it's not interrupted by the lapped cars. And that's good news from our point of view, because it means that we're seeing real racing not interrupted by cars that aren't a part of that, but it will take a little bit of time perhaps for lapped cars to go through. It is only Guido van der Garde, he's the only one, and just see it in the background, the Caterham with the yellow roll hoop on its camera, and you'll see him pick his way through and come past the others.
One of the difficulties, of course, when you've got guys weaving around in front of you trying to keep heat in their tyres and brakes, is there isn't space.
Sebastian, your tyres were marginal on the last stint. Tyres marginal on the last stint, wear limited. Take that into account into the next stint. It'll be difficult.
Interesting. Wear limited on the super soft that he started the race on, but he's now on a different tyre, of course. He's now on the soft tyre going into this second part of the race. Well, we do think
the life of the soft tyre should be a bit better, of course.
Yeah, Tom, what have you got?
Ben, I was just going to say, with every lap that the safety car is out, that's going to help Mercedes, isn't it? Because they are, it gives one less lap that they're not having to take energy out of their tyres. And I'm just wondering whether someone like Webber, who came in on lap 26, can now make this a one-stop race rather than a two.
Well, there is that chance perhaps, but you do need an awful lot of laps to really protect the tyres that much. We'll have to wait and see. Another stop there for Jules Bianchi, and well, might as well do that because there's nothing to lose, I think, for Jules Bianchi. As Van der Garde has got himself back round to the back of the queue, it's an opportunity for Marussia of Bianchi to stay in front of Van der Garde and go on to a good set of tyres. So we'll see, they're always conscious of each other, battling for 10th place in the championship, of course, Marussia and Caterham. And Marussia currently have that 10th place thanks to Bianchi's 13th place finish in Malaysia earlier this year. Neither team, of course, have scored points, nor have Williams yet this year. And right now, you'd have to say that's not looking very likely again, because Valtteri Bottas is down in 15th place. Pastor Maldonado is down in 18th position. So I don't think Williams, unless we get a big pile-up somewhere, are very likely to get into the points here today. But who knows, Monaco often throws up some big surprises as we go through the race. And Rosberg just maintaining concentration at the moment, and all the drivers being told to look after their cars in different ways here, David. Sutil being told his brake temperatures are cold, his tyre temperatures are dropping as well, as Van der Garde has made a pit stop himself now and rejoins, and he will be behind Bianchi as he comes back out. Still not seeing the safety car coming in just yet. I wonder if he'll be held at the end of the pit lane. You would think so, and then join the back of the queue.
Well, it has to be said, this is purely because of the attention that Felipe Massa we saw being attended to, and setting up alert those who've just tuned in. And you can see his car there that's crashed down at turn 1, but this is purely to make sure that they can give him the best attention possible, make decisions as to whether he's just a little bit shaken or whether he needs further attention. It's nothing to do with the actual debris, or the car, as you can see, has been removed from the circuit. So every single driver can understand and appreciate, you know, they're eager to go racing, but when it involves the safety of one of your colleagues, then we don't mind having a few laps of safety car.
Can you use higher gears? Higher gears, just want to cool the car, but we still need to keep these brake temps up.
So just explain that one, David. What needs cooling and what doesn't?
Well, to bring the engine temperature down, then he'll, instead of running around in second gear, they'll want him to run in third or fourth. It just drops the RPM, and inevitably with less revolutions there's less heat building up. But of course he's having to try and keep the tire temperature as well. So it's kind of, well, take one step forward, one step back. You're not really going anywhere. And then we see that's when Perez, early in the race, allowed Button to take back his position. Cleverly did it on the run down to back to make sure that he wasn't going to lose any other places. It's just one of those arty slow-mo shots that we get from time to time.
Yep, through the swimming pool section. Silver Arrow is leading here, but the other one of Hamilton, through this safety car intervention, has dropped to 4th place. So it now is a Mercedes versus Red Bull battle.
Well, that's a medical car now heading off.
Nico, you had 60% remaining on the rear's tyres and 50% on front left, so you're evenly worn.
That's good. There's a huge amount of tyre information, isn't it, being related to the drivers now?
Yeah, you know, he'll be getting a little gold star beside his name. That's him just trying to get the safety car to get a move on. He knows he's probably low on his tyre temps, and the safety car will be going as fast as he possibly can. No matter how fast those road cars are, it's nothing in comparison to what a single-seater racing car can do.
Yeah, and that really does cause a problem, doesn't it? Because when you come out of the pits, your tyres are preheated. Now there is a real loss of temperature in them. How difficult does that make the car to drive once the safety car gets out of the way?
Well, you lose tyre pressure when you lose temperature, and that means the car runs lower. And then that means, of course, you drag the plank, the wooden plank, which is underneath these cars, hits the deck. So they'll be banging into the ground when they eventually get going again.
The safety car out there, and it has changed the top 3 because Lewis Hamilton has dropped from 2nd to 4th place. There is Lewis Hamilton. He is now behind the 2 Red Bulls. Vettel is now in 2nd. Webber is 3rd. Then behind Hamilton, you've still got Raikkonen in 5th, Alonso 6th, Button 7th, Perez 8th, and then the top 10 completed by Sutil and Verne. And Paul di Resta has used his early race stop, and that's worked quite well for him under safety car. He's now moved up to 11th. But of course he will have to stop at some point again. Mercedes look to be trying to get to the flag. It looks as though all the leaders will be trying to get to the flag on that one single pit stop. There's still a long way to go in this race. 40 laps to go.
Well, Rosberg now controls the pace. He's choosing to go with the safety car pretty much. He'll just back them up as they go through the last part of the swimming pool here. There you can see, and then he'll, once he feels the safety car has made it round and into the pit lane, he'll unleash it. There he goes.
We're going racing once again here in Monaco as the green flags fly. already thinking, I want to win this race at the end of the race? Is he already thinking about his tyres? He doesn't seem to have gone after Nico Rosberg straight away. Lewis Hamilton, of course, now in 4th place. Behind is Kimi Raikkonen in 5th, and then Fernando Alonso. But I'm a little surprised that Vettel wasn't more aggressive at the restart there.
Well, he's had the information from his engineer that he was marginal on the last set of tyres. They know that a championship, you want to win all the races, of course, but a championship is about getting good points across the whole season, to state the obvious. And at this phase, maybe he's just saying, well, today might not be the day that we can win a Grand Prix, but I'm sure going to make sure that I outscore my main rivals in the championship.
Raikkonen's struggling a bit here. I don't know whether it's tyre temperature or brake temperature. He said that the team were telling him he had cold tyres, and I think he could be under threat from Alonso. He has to go very defensive into the chicane to block Alonso, but he will lose performance on the exit. Now he's having to cover as Hamilton also is on the attack. Nowhere for Alonso to go. It's allowing Jenson Button to close right up behind the Ferrari, of course, and Raikkonen really showing us there, David, what you were talking about when it comes to restarting the race on cold tyres.
Well, Pirelli, we know, are very susceptible to the overall temperature. Track temperature now 42 degrees. That's the hottest we've had all weekend. So Kimi should be able to get it all switched back on relatively quickly. As you see the onboard from Alonso, this is a run down to the first corner.
Of course, he's got a, well, no, it's just not
a lock
close
up
enough.
in front from someone. I can see some puff of smoke there, but anyway, they're all through safely.
Sebastian, Rosberg is not marginal on wear at all, so just maintain position, as big as a gap as you need.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Mercedes are comfortable, and Red Bull are the ones struggling for tyre wear. Who'd have thought that after the last race in Spain, when Mercedes dropped away with really bad tyre degradation? Hamilton looking racy, Alonso down the outside there of Raikkonen, but he's got to watch his back because
Alonso will be ready to pounce as they go into the relative darkness of the tunnel, and then that bright sunlight that attacks your eyes. And at the moment you can see Raikkonen locking up the front right, still struggling. And well, Hamilton having a little look at back. It's just not wide enough there really. And as we got that radio message there from Rocky, Vettel's engineer, I can kind of sense a whole bunch of people at home with 38 laps to go groaning that we're not seeing a race here. We're almost going to accept second place.
Hamilton side by side with Webber. He's found a little gap, but Webber gets back in front. Well, I don't quite know where he found that. Alonso, meanwhile, is right behind the Lotus again of Kimi Raikkonen as we go back on board with Hamilton.
That was beautiful driving from both those drivers. Hamilton, at his instinctive best, throws it down the outside of Webber, who was caught napping, and then look at that fantastic pounce. But Webber, so professional, senses the car's there, releases his cars off of Raskas, and well, if he'd pulled that off, that would have been one of those places we would have said we've never seen someone overtake there before.
That nearly was a heroic pass, but as you say, Webber did extremely well to give him space. It could easily have ended in a tangle, but they both drove extremely well to get out of it, and they're still running in 3rd and 4th places. But the race is being led, and indeed the advantage being stretched out a little bit by Nico Rosberg in the Mercedes. Vettel is the one chasing in 2nd, Webber 3rd, Hamilton, there he is in 4th place then. Gap back to Kimi Raikkonen in 5th position, then Alonso. Jenson Button is 7th, Perez is 8th. We're back on board with Lewis Hamilton here, and he's just demonstrating how much he wants to get past. He's trying to find new places to overtake here at Monaco, but it didn't quite come off. Let's see if he tries anything again here. I think Webber might be wise to it.
Yeah, well, if he's not, I'd be very surprised. Look at that, he's a car's width over now. But great driving though, that didn't end up in contact. It just shows when you've got a couple of pros, they know how to handle it.
Yeah, and on board with Hamilton as he comes down the start-finish straight here into Saint-Devote, and is just not able to get close enough in any other areas, using the curves a little bit as they go up the hill, but saving it for other areas. Let's watch him through Casino Square here. Avoiding the big bump as they come out and down the hill. Always looks a very violent change of direction. Raikkonen still defending. Button's got a chance. Button's got a chance on the inside.
And contacts.
They hit each other. Ferrari and McLaren, there was definite contact. You were riding on board. You could just sort of feel it, couldn't you? Let's take another look here.
Well, as Alonso went wide, Button saw the opportunity, and look at that little dink, and well, won't be any damage. That was wheel on wheel, so no damage to the wing.
Oh,
and then
Perez
Perez down the inside of Button.
Perez has passed Button. Oh, he's not going to like that, is he? But that was a brave attempt. Certainly, perhaps put them both at risk, but Perez made the move. He wants that psychological edge over Jenson Button. Button lost momentum, of course, in the incident with Alonso, and Perez has taken full advantage of that. So he's reclaimed the spot that he had earlier on ahead of his teammate.
Oh, it's a long snaking train of racing cars as everyone's trying to be kind to their tyres and see if they can not have to stop again this afternoon.
So Alonso still unable to get past that Lotus. He's now got Sergio Perez close behind him rather than Jenson Button. Let's take another look at this move from Perez.
Brave stuff. Turned in, front wheels locked up, but got the job done.
Wow, yeah, just full lock of it initially, wasn't it? Nothing happening at all, but he just made the chicane and certainly won't have to give that place back this time. So up front, Rosberg from Vettel, Webber, the queue developing here. Both Force Indias in that queue, of course. Sutil in 9th, Di Resta is 11th, Hulkenberg is 12th, Ricardo, Grosjean all the way down in 14th. Quiet day for Romain Grosjean.
Everything okay with the nose? Everything okay with the nose? I tapped Fernando with the hairpin.
Yep, Jensen, everything looks okay. Everything looks okay.
And I wonder when he was asking that. You almost wonder if that was when Sergio Perez was just lining him up to pass.
Yeah, possible. I would expect that he would have talked on the radio at a lower speed corner, though, rather than through the braking phase. You tend to try and do it where there's the least amount of background noise, and that tends to be in the middle of the slow corners.
So Button now finds himself following his teammate once more, but otherwise everything is fairly settled. Hamilton still in 4th place, having lost the position through the safety car intervention, and Mercedes going for the later pit stop than those around them. But Rosberg was just able to get out in front of the Red Bulls and maintains the lead that he's had from the start of this race, starting from pole position. And Nico Rosberg has led so far, but is he going to stay there? Things are looking good for them. Their tyre wear is looking promising, and it doesn't look as though they're going to struggle like they did at the last couple of Grand Prix. Back on board with Fernando Alonso, trying to force Kimi Raikkonen into a mistake. But so far, no sign of an error from the Iceman. He's had a little bit of a problem on the restart after the safety car with cold tyre temperatures, but he seems to have handled that challenge for now.
Yeah, he's got through. They'll be into their operating window now, and it's just a question of...
Oh, a move from Perez on Alonso. Alonso sees him coming, gets out of the way, and then hops over the chicane. Now, he should be allowed to keep that, I would think, because he simply was trying to avoid the other car, not really gaining advantage through that.
Well, that's certainly what he'll claim, Ben. He had to give space to Perez, and you know, the strategy worked on Button. It is a high-risk strategy. You put your car down the inside, and the only way it works is if the other car's compliant and moves out of the way. Otherwise, you will have contact.
It's interesting because in Bahrain, of course, Perez was pretty aggressive with Alonso there too, wasn't he? So Alonso very wary. He saw that early on and kept out of the way of the young Mexican, who is clearly determined to prove himself today.
Well, two different strategies. Alonso's trying to think of this championship. You can see Alonso's well aware that he's coming. Keeps on the outside, gives him space, and then, well, it looks like Perez was going to repay that by giving him a bit of space as well on the next corner. But in the end, he's faced with that big yellow curve that would damage the underside of the car. And you could say that Alonso still had his nose ahead. But Perez, it's all about trying to impress the team and try and get what he can out of a difficult start for McLaren. Alonso's trying to play the long game for the championship.
Absolutely right, yeah. So that's what he's thinking about. Alonso always aware of the points at the end of the season, not necessarily about each individual race glory moment anyway. He still wants to get past Raikkonen if he possibly can, of course, but at the moment there doesn't seem to be that opportunity to do so. So up front it's still Nico Rosberg leading this race. 45 laps now. Well, we will have completed 45 laps when they get to the end of this race, so still a decent distance to go. Let's just listen to the radio.
Fernando got the chicane.
Yep, understood, Checo, understood, we saw it.
Fernando cut the chicane, well, yeah.
Yep, it was clear to avoid the collision and to avoid the yellow curve, which would be a safety problem. We are checking.
Now that, and damage on the front of Bianchi's car, that is. Here's Gilles Bianchi in the Marussia. Oh, he's having a
Knocked his wing off somewhere.
very busy day of it, isn't he? Back into the pits, yeah, hit something somewhere, and he's back into the pit lane. Hopefully they've got a spare nose cone.
Yeah, it's been bent under itself, so has he rear-ended someone under braking?
Let's take a look here. That's Chilton in the first of the Marussias you're looking at. Oh! Chilton with Maldonado.
Huge crash there. Is this going to be safety car?
Could be. Let's just take another look at this if we can.
Yeah, and then he gets hit second time by Bianchi. So, yeah, safety car will be out, I would say. Look at all that.
My goodness, that's the damage to the front of Gilles Bianchi's car. Red, we're seeing on our screens now. Yeah, red flag. The race has been stopped. Very unusual. It must be blocked. The track must be blocked. Gary, normally we go to safety car now, but presumably there's just no space down there.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any space, and I think the car has moved the barrier across the track as well, so, we'll take a bit of a clear-up job. All this stuff, this is not what Nico Rosberg needs, is it, to win this Grand Prix, but, he was doing a good job there.
It's good, though, just to mention that Pastor Maldonado's out of his car, Gary. He's clearly okay, because that was a very heavy hit. I mean, we were standing down there on Thursday watching the car through there, and I was pretty scared standing the other side of the barrier.
Yeah, well, it is pretty quick, but yeah, there's a car in there somewhere, and they got the barriers around it, so we'll have to see. There was nobody else involved. I'm not quite sure of the outcome, because there may be another car in there as well. But yeah, looking at what Rosberg was doing there, obviously before the first safety car he was doing high 19s, after the safety car and after going back out in this set of tyres, high 22s. So he was really protecting the tyres for this little stint, and that meant the top 14 were within 9 seconds. So, really packing them all up, but having the confidence the tyres would be there for the last laps.
But I guess now with a red flag, this changes everything. You're allowed to change tyres again. We saw that a couple of years ago when there was a red flag, the race was interrupted. Vettel was struggling on tyres on that occasion, but you are allowed to put a different set of tyres on now.
You are allowed to change tyres, but it's again the same for everybody now, so it's one of those sort of situations. Nobody really is going to win or gain out of this lot. It's just an interruption in the race.
Well, it's not an interruption that we would have liked to have seen, but Pastor Maldonado is walking away, which is always the good news, that he's okay and that no drivers appear to have been hurt in that incident. The car's back onto the start-finish area, back onto the grid after this race has been stopped, and the marshal's getting to work to put that Tech Pro barrier back into place. Now, let's see how it all started to build up, David.
We can see Max Chilton missed the chicane, and as he's running down, going defensive into the back, Maldonado on the outside of him and rides up. Thankfully, he comes back down again before making contact with the barrier. So a little bit clumsy there, racing incident. I don't think that Max Chilton would have expected Maldonado to be on his outside as they braked into the corner.
No, that's right. It's he was concentrating on where he was going. It's not a usual place that somebody would try necessarily to come past you, so a very unfortunate incident. But Maldonado, look at the amount of debris. Of course, some of that sort of material from the Tech Pro barriers, I would guess as well, which do absorb a lot of impact. Certainly a lot better than going straight into an Armco, or even a lot better than going straight into tyres. The energy absorbing capabilities of that material do mean that the car doesn't get flicked out quite so much, but clearly it did cause a major blockage. Tom, let's get to you. I believe you're with Pirelli Motorsports, Paul Hembry.
I am indeed, Ben. Now, Paul, Paul's just having a quick chat to Bob Fernley, but Paul, it's been a fascinating Grand Prix so far, but I guess this red flag is going to help everybody at the front.
Yeah, very much so, and in reality the first safety car did as well, where there was some people really looking at maybe doing a two-stop race, others on a one, and now with the red flag they can change the tyres on the restart. Pretty much what happened in 2011.
What sort of wear are we seeing? What reports are you getting back from your engineers?
Yeah, the wear's actually been the limiting factor. Normally, this season it's degradation, but they're all in negative degradation up until the changes, but it was wear limited today.
And do you think we could have seen a one-stop had it not been for this red flag?
Certainly, some people were looking for a one-stop, when they set out, and as I say, the safety car plus now the red flag has meant really that they're all probably on. Well, they are going to be all on the same strategy at the front.
Now, there might be a little bit of frustration from people at home, drivers driving to a lap time rather than going flat out. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know if they're doing that. They're all really in negative degradation, so normally when that happens, they're not driving to do a lap time. So I think, of course, you can't overtake. You've seen a couple of manoeuvres, a few blocks. So in reality, as long as you can keep the person behind you, that's the way you win in Monaco.
Brilliant. Just before you go, give us your top 3.
I think as they are now, really.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thanks, Tom. Well, yes, it certainly does seem to have helped all of those front runners, but look at the amount of damage there is to the Williams, and what a shocking year it is proving to be for Williams, David. No points scored so far this year. Pastor Maldonado now out, a lot of damage to the car. Bottas was still running. He was 15th on the last classification, and just to remind you, what happens in these situations is that the race will be restarted as the positions were on the last lap, basically, and it just continues. The race just continues. It's not a two-part race. You don't add the parts together. It just continues from those grid positions, so they'll all be close together and they'll race to the flag. The resumption will be as short as possible in all these cases, according to the regulations, but they will then be given a 10-minute sign to the restart of the race. So they then go through their normal kind of countdown procedure. Mark Webber there, looking quite heated, and explaining something.
It's actually looking relatively fresh, considering he's been blasting around the streets of Monte Carlo. Not much sweat on his brow.
Let's get back down there, because Tom is with Christian Horner.
Yes, I am, Ben. Christian, your thoughts on how it's going so far?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we managed to pick up a pace with both cars through the safety car. This effectively neutralises the race. It's good for Mark because he had a few more laps on his tyres. It's a bit of a high-speed train at the moment.
Can you get past Nico Rosberg?
It's going to be tough, but we'll give it a go. So, this now neutralises the race. Away we go again. And, we'll see what we can do.
And do you think you could have managed to do it if there hadn't been a red flag?
Well, I think the problem is everybody's pushed towards a one-stop, so they're all in tyre conservation mode. They're probably driving around 2 seconds beneath what the car's capable of doing. You've got Van der Gaard in the Caterham that at one point was the quickest car at the back of the queue, so it demonstrates how much they're all under driving a bit at the moment.
Just final question, wonderful to see Lewis and Mark having such a clean fight through Rascasse a couple of laps ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mark left the door a little bit open there, but recovered it well, and I looked out at the next lap and he didn't leave the door open at all from then. So of course everybody's just trying to protect the tyres because of the one-stop route that it's gone down. Now this neutralises a bit, so we'll see what happens between now and the run to the finish.
Great stuff, good luck.
Thank you.
Well, it leaves a 33-lap race, presumably 32 laps, presumably for the final stint. Now that's well within the range of the soft tyre, super soft maybe, so they've got to make that decision now as to which tyre they're going to do this last part of the race on, haven't they?
Well, there's quite an offset between the soft and the super soft through qualifying, more than half a second depending on your car. Obviously reduces by around half, in some cases more. It's very much track temperature and car dependent, and we're just seeing the replay. This is when I think the Jensen Button just tags the back of Fernando Alonso. It's just a little peck on the cheek there, really, isn't it? It's not a full-on French kiss.
No, and Alonso, I think, getting away with that. Sometimes you get a puncture on a tyre, don't you, with that wing end plate just touches the tyre, but obviously that didn't happen on this occasion. This was Perez getting past his teammate.
Brave stuff, throws it down the inside, gets it all locked up, and just the difference in the mindset of the young charger trying to make the most of his situation versus the more experienced hands who are trying to play the long game. And this involved Fernando having to be quite compliant on the first part of the braking phase. You really, when you put yourself in that situation, you're saying, right, I'm coming through, you either make space for me or there will be an incident.
But awareness there from Alonso. He knew all the time what was going on. So no matter how focused he was on going forwards, he always knew what was around him. So great driving once again from the double world champion, who definitely is in the hunt for the championship this year. But what about Mercedes? They are now showing the kind of care for the tyres we just have not seen in recent Grand Prix. Of course, they were fast in Bahrain, they were fast in Spain, but they couldn't repeat that on race day.
It's almost like they've had an additional test somewhere just to help them get their eye in, isn't it?
Funny that, isn't it? Yes. Controversy, of course, leading into the race today about the fact that it's been discovered Mercedes did indeed test Pirelli tyres since the last race in Barcelona. Fernando Alonso looking thoughtful, David?
Very clever. When I was walking up to the commentary box, when you got all the drivers surrounded by people on the grid, he was just standing in the pit lane with his manager all alone when all the camera crews and everybody's out on the grid looking for the drivers.
Yeah, very sensible of him. Stay out of the massive people that were gathered on the grid. Now let's look at this accident once again. Chilton is the red and black car there with the yellow top, then Maldonado in the Williams moving to the outside, then Chilton coming back to take his line into the corner presumably.
Yeah, it looks like Maldonado was, well, he was probably a little bit further, well, it looked like his front wheel touched the back of the front wheel of Chilton. So on that basis, then Max should have been aware he was there. If you can get basically your car alongside the side pod of the car you're battling with, well, that's into the peripheral vision of the driver in front. Initially, when I saw that, it looked like Maldonado had basically just had his rear wheel, or his front wheel, at the rear wheel of Chilton's car. And therefore, you know, Chilton shouldn't have been expected to know he was right beside him. You know, you can't enter a corner looking at an apex and looking in the mirror at the same time. So I'm sure that might be investigated afterwards as the marshals still go about the process of tying down those barriers. They're strapped there, and obviously the straps broke due to the impact.
Just looking at some slow-mo action of Nico Rosberg. Let's use this opportunity to bring Eddie Jordan into the equation. Eddie, what are you making of this race so far?
Of course we heard before the start of the race all the palaver about the tyre issue, and that'll be unfolded in weeks and months in the future because some teams are quite upset about it. But nevertheless, what happens is that no one really gave Nico Rosberg the chance to win this, and what he's done so far, in my opinion, has been spectacular. He's controlled the race. Everything has been set against him, whether it be the safety car or now the race being stopped. You know, there's a lot of people here in Monaco, where he's from, of course, they want to see him win this race.
We're just getting some shots of him now, Eddie, and you've got to wonder what his emotions are like. He's looking pretty cool. He's a pretty cool customer most of the time, isn't he?
No, he is a very cool customer. He's come up in this world. I mean, his dad, I believe, won here 30 years ago, and Keke and I were very close friends, still are. But so he comes from a family that understands motor racing. It's been brought up in his blood, and more than anyone, he has managed to survive years with Michael Schumacher. Anyone who can do that and come out at the other end and still lead races, you know, he's a steely character, and make no mistake, if he gets a chance to win this, he'll pull it off.
Now tell me, EJ, what are you making of Sergio Perez's race? He's been fairly feisty, hasn't he?
Well, I'm sure he's a thorn in the side of Jensen. Jensen probably wishes he could have Lewis back again, because even in the darkest moments, you'd have to say that Lewis didn't put up with this kind of a fight. I mean, it's a very feisty move. Some of the things are questionable.
Thanks, Eddie. Tom, I believe you're with Martin Whitmarsh.
Yes, Ben, I am. Martin, tremendous to see your boys dicing again. Your thoughts how the race is going?
Those had some exciting moments. You know, clearly our two guys are fighting each other, but I think good, you know, Checo fighting with Fernando as well, and you know, I think it's clear that Fernando's going to have to give that place up once this race gets going again, and we'll see what happens thereafter. I think it's going to be still an exciting race ahead of us.
And any damage to Jensen's car after he hit Alonso?
There's some cosmetic, very small cosmetic damage. In fact, I'm just going to go and have a look at it, but I think the judgment is we won't change it. You can actually change it, as you know, we're going to change tyres as well, but and to start behind the safety car, but I think we've still got quite a lot of exciting racing ahead of us.
Well, you're 7th and 8th. Are you going to have a quick word with the lads just to get them to calm it down?
No, I think they're racing, and you know, I don't want Checo to be any calmer around Fernando or anyone else. So, you know, I think Fernando's going to have to give that place up, so that puts Checo one place further forward, and you know, if he's in the mood to start doing that, then let him have a go at Kimi and a few others.
Well, Fernando has actually said over the radio that he was avoiding a collision.
Well, he would say that, wouldn't he? But you know, that's always. But I think it doesn't matter what I think, or as I understand, the FIA have made a decision, and that they required him to give the place back.
Okay, thank you. Good luck with the rest of the race.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. Well, of course, those messages would be just between the FIA and the teams involved. We'll have to see if that actually does come out at the restart of the race. If you suddenly see Alonso moving out of the way of Perez. He's currently 6th and Perez 7th, so if he does move out of the way, then they've obviously had the word. We've just been told the race will be resumed at 3:35 local time, so that is just over 10 minutes, and but we will wait to see that. I'm sure that Ferrari will be arguing the point, and that's certainly why Alonso made the point over the radio that he felt he was avoiding a collision.
Okay, Checo, Ferrari have been told that Alonso has to give the place back to you. Ferrari have been told Alonso has to give the place back.
So there we are, confirmation.
Fernando is confirming that out of last corner, he was not using the KERS to let Perez go. So we didn't use the KERS for this reason.
See, Andrea, I spoke to Charlie about that. Actually, the solution I asked Charlie is to give the position back at the restart, after the safety car is coming back to the pit, and he is speaking to the stewards at the moment. But if we will get the order, the decision, we have to respect it, so we will see. Come back to you.
I think that's harsh.
Okay, so we will give the position back once we have the restart after the safety car.
Andrea, no, this is what I offer to Charlie. He's discussing this with the stewards, and he will come back to me.
Okay, so it's still under discussion a little bit, but...
no, I think the process, I understand from that, of how they give the place back.
Right.
The cleanest and safest would be to do it now on the grid. Here you see, so great opportunist move here from Perez. I think personally that's a bit harsh that Alonso has to give the place back. You could argue that he was marginally behind when they came to the apex of the second corner, but oh my God, I'd like to know what the fans at home really think. It's not as if Alonso gained a huge advantage from it, and I don't see how Perez would have, you know, if Alonso had stayed on the racing line, he would have just T-boned Perez and they'd both be out. But anyway, rules are rules, and you've got to say Perez has been one of the few men making overtaking opportunities happen this afternoon, so he gets full credit for that.
Yep, no, he's been attacking, there's no doubt about it, and Alonso looking very thoughtful. There is Sergio Perez. Another incident, the one of course between Maldonado and Chilton, that has caused this red flag, now under investigation, but Maldonado certainly out of the race. I think Chilton's car was relatively undamaged and should be able to take the restart in theory. Sebastian Vettel now then starting to get ready as we've got this restart time ahead of us, and now engines beginning to be fired up once again, and drivers having to refocus and get their brains in gear for what is still a decent stint of this race to go.
It is, but they've broken the back of this race. Anyone who had any uncomfortable, you know, cramps or anything like that, they've had a chance to stop, get out, catch the breath. So this effectively, in Monaco terms, becomes a sprint.
Presumably physically this race is one of the easier ones, but mentally one of the more demanding.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it used to be, when the lap times were a lot closer to qualifying pace, when you had refueling, that it was physically tough because of all the braking and the concentration, as you say. But you know, it has to be said that with lap times so slow relative to qualifying, that takes a huge amount of energy out of the drivers, and frankly that's why you don't even see really sweat in their heads anymore when they get out of the car. So you can see that great image there of that sort of intimate relationship you have with your mechanic as they strap you into the car. Nico Rosberg knows he doesn't have to go through the grid procedure that he had last time, so pretty much guaranteed to lead into the first corner unless something mechanically happens.
So we're just looking down at the Lotus there of Kimi Räikkönen. He's in 5th place, of course, and he'll be, I suppose, a little relieved to learn that Alonso is probably going to give that place back to Perez, because it might take... Well, will he be relieved? Do you want Alonso behind you, or do you want Perez behind you? That's a bit of a question, actually, at this point in the race, because Perez has been the most aggressive, probably, of those out there, and as you pointed out, doesn't really have to worry about his championship standing, so he is likely to go on the attack.
Yeah, I think he will. Just filling in on what I was saying there about the difference in qualifying and race pace. Hamilton's our fastest man so far this afternoon, and he's just under 6 seconds slower than he did in qualifying.
So everybody now being strapped into their cars. You're there with Sergio Perez as the McLaren crew get him in the car. Set the fastest lap here at Monaco last year when he was driving for Sauber, but he also picked up a penalty. If you remember, he cut in on Kimi Räikkönen coming into the pits and picked up a penalty as a result of that. Might well end up seeing them go wheel to wheel again here now that he's driving for his new team McLaren. Interesting announcement, of course, since we were last with you, was that McLaren will be joined by Honda for 2015. So that's a renewal of a relationship, of course, that brought a huge amount of success to that team, David.
Well, they're very successful, as you say, pairing that they had. Sort of an iconic McLaren Honda at that time. It's going to make for an uncomfortable season next year between Mercedes and...
Can we go up a bit on the front wing? Can we do that now? Yeah, I had too much understeer on the option run, so if we go up a turn, that'd be good.
That's interesting. He was saying too much understeer on the option run, which means the super soft, so that sort of implies that he's going to be using the super soft to the end of the race, which is quite a longish stint, isn't it, on the super soft tyre, but there's more rubber down. We're a long way through the race, the track's getting better.
Cars are lighter. Let's wait and see as he takes on some fluid there. You know, this is just coming up what we were saying earlier, Ben. It's not physical in terms of high G-force around here, but it's quite hot. You know, you don't get the air flowing around the car. No air conditioning, and of course just the open top there, and fluid loss. You can lose up to a couple of kilograms in body weight as you sweat during the race.
The concentration we've been talking about to race here is intense. Now that they've been out of the car and that concentration has been broken, any problem bringing it back?
Well, it can be, because you've kind of got out of your rhythm. Body cools down a little bit, you know, you get into a zone. So let's just wait and see. Whoever's, you know, managed to get themselves switched on might be able to take advantage in the early laps when the cars are all, well, it's been a fairly close race this afternoon anyway in terms of the gaps between the cars. You know, that even the little washer there is...
Dave, what tyre do we think other people are going to use? Okay, so Checo definitely is an option, and we expect that everybody else will also be on option.
Oh, that's interesting. So they think that everybody's going to be using the softer of the two compounds of tyre to get them to the end of the race. Still, I suppose it applies, you know, how you look after that tyre, because it's not as though they're only doing a 10-lap sprint here. They are doing over 30 laps going into the final part of this race. So they do need to think about it a little bit, but clearly if they were in any worries, you would think that they would put on the slightly harder compound tyre. Bit of dry ice to do some cooling.
That's it. No fans on these cars, so they have to blow it through there. Slightly bizarre, you know, they'll be starting the engine to heat it up and circulate the water, and then blowing dry ice down to keep it all nice and cool.
Let's hope they remove all the bits and pieces. Remember, Jenson Button had a duct piece left on the car, didn't he, a few years ago here at Monaco, which put him out of the race. Fernando Alonso now back in the car. It's not been the weekend that Ferrari were looking for so far. 6th in this race, winner last time out in Spain. 2 wins so far this year, but this is an exceptional race, remember, and Ferrari do seem to have a car that's quick on most tracks. They were fast in China, they were quick in Bahrain, but of course he had the DRS problem, which didn't show what he could have done. 1 in Spain, and there's no doubt that Red Bull are very concerned about the all-round pace of the Ferrari, but here at Monaco, where Red Bull, remember, have won the last 3 Grand Prix in a row, do not yet bet against them, because they will go on the attack here. 4 in a row is a possibility. It's been done by 2 manufacturers, 2 constructors in the past. BRM did it in the 60s, and McLaren did it, but even better, McLaren did it 6 times in a row. Amazing that McLaren had 6 wins in a row around the streets here.
Yeah, they were all dominant for a while, but they also won 15 out of 16 races one year.
That's right. So we're just looking at the Mercedes guys getting ready now, and the tyre blankets being left on till the last moment, of course, to make sure that tyre heat is retained in the cars. So we've lost Charles Pic from this race earlier on. That was the fire, of course. We lost Felipe Massa. He had the accident down into Saint-Devant. We've now lost Pastor Maldonado from the race.
Both Red Bulls were limited on their first stint of the option tyre. They've got to do 5 more laps on this set that they've got now.
And that's encouraging for Hamilton. but there's less fuel in the car and there's more rubber down on the track, so it should enable them to do that attacking a little harder. But Mercedes do know that they are in good shape, they're in control in terms of position. Hamilton, though, of course, has got to try and get past those two Red Bulls. He's in fourth, so there's a bit of work to be done for him. And there you are, confirmation of these super soft tyres with the red writing on the sidewalls, and we think that just about everybody has gone for that tyre. We will confirm that in a moment. The second part of this race about to get underway on the formation lap. They will start behind safety car, though. That is the rule if a race gets interrupted, so they will go out, go around and then start a single file effectively, and they are all restarting on the super soft tyre, except, interestingly, Kimi Räikkönen and Nico Hülkenberg going into this final stint of the race. A different strategy there from Lotus, which is very interesting. Now, we know that Fernando Alonso has been told to give up his place to Sergio Perez, so they will swap those two cars around, and that's going to change things around a little bit.
Okay, we will give the position back behind the safety car. Behind the safety car. Correct, so do it straight away, basically.
Confirmation of that then, that Ferrari will allow Sergio Perez to pass. That was because the stewards deemed that Alonso did cut the chicane when he was passed by Sergio Perez, and that is the rule. If you cut that chicane at all, then you do have to give up the place that you're fighting for. So Perez has now moved up one, and it means that he will be behind Kimi Räikkönen. He'll be in 6th place. Kimi Räikkönen in 5th position.
Well, remember, Kimi struggled at the restart last time around, so this must be a good opportunity for Perez. Give his eyes set on 4th place this afternoon.
Now you've got to wonder who is going to go on the attack when this race does restart. Who has got the confidence that their tyres are going to hold up well? Rosberg has led this race from the start, from pole position, and he has led through the first safety car intervention. And then, of course, he has managed to lead through the race stoppage, the interruption. Just confirmation on the screen there of Perez being allowed to pass Alonso, who left the track with advantage, they call it. But they will be starting, and look how slow Rosberg is taking them now. Very, very slow, as he is allowed to control the pace of the restart. And now he's going to go on the attack. Behind him is Vettel and Webber and Hamilton, of course. Now remember how Räikkönen struggled on the restart last time. They have got preheated tyres this time, so it should be a little bit easier. Away we go once again. Rosberg leading the race, not under attack right this moment from the two Red Bulls, but let's see how this develops. Vettel chases him up the hill. Webber is in 3rd place. Red Bull looking at a double podium here today, which would still be a tremendous result for them. And remember, in the championship, Vettel leads the championship. His main rivals are Kimi Räikkönen, who is in 5th place, and Fernando Alonso at the moment, who's down in 6th place, 7th place of course now, because of Perez going ahead of him. So down into lows they come, and you can see there Perez chased by Alonso, Button, then Sutil, Jean-Eric Vergne, who's still in the points in 10th place and could have an opportunity to score points for Toro Rosso once again here.
Well, all clean, no one really having a look as they went through the Lowe's hairpin. Let's see as they come down into the chicane whether anyone takes that opportunity to nip down the inside. Räikkönen quite defensive.
Max Chilton has been given a drive-through penalty for causing a collision, so he's been blamed for the crash that took Pastor Maldonado out and caused the interruption in this race.
Well, I think the replay showed us that Maldonado was well alongside Max, and I think he's got away quite lightly, frankly, given the amount of damage that's been done to the Williams.
Still Hamilton chases after Webber. That's the closest run here. Look at that. You could just see Hamilton bearing down on Mark Webber. Is there any chance to overtake, though? Not really, as they come down towards Saint-Devote. He goes tight to the inside.
There's Alonso trying round the outside, Ben.
Yeah, Alonso attacking Perez, but he didn't make it. You could just see that as they went through the corner, he was still behind the McLaren. Aggressive stuff, though, from Fernando Alonso. Good attempt and brave stuff when you remember he's chasing championship points as much as possible. But he's always the master of the start and therefore the restart, but he hasn't been able to gain that place as yet. Perez finding his mirrors filled with red Ferrari here, tight into the hairpin. Now, can he get the grip, the traction he needs here out of these next couple of corners, and then attack at the chicane, which is of course where Perez got past him earlier.
Well, Perez will have deployed cars coming off of that second Portier corner. got too big a gap as they come out into the bright sunshine, so it isn't going to happen this lap. Strategic driving here from Perez, one watching his mirror on Alonso and then trying to see if he can sniff out a gap on Raikkonen.
Through to back corner where the accident occurred that caused the interruption to this race. They all fly through the swimming pool corners and then behind the back of the pits, past the grandstand, past our commentary position, and then as Nico Rosberg rounds the final turn, he's already opened up nearly a second over Sebastian Vettel, past the pit boards which are displayed on that start-finish area. 1.2 seconds in fact the gap is as they cross the line there, and Sergio Perez this time not under quite such attack from Fernando Alonso. Red Bull's up the hill. It's still Hamilton who is hounding the back of Mark Webber's car though, and 28 laps remain. They have still got some way to go in this race.
Yeah, the gap last time around, Webber was only 0.4 of a second at the start-finish line, so nudging up the back of Vettel's gearbox. And let's see Alonso as he's just following round. That's the view from Hamilton's car. Let's see if he can run close to Webber as they come through the second portier. Webber was a little bit wide there on the apex, but yeah, he's got more than enough of a gap as they come out to the braking zone.
Interesting noise on the down change on the Mercedes, isn't it?
Yeah, they shift down very late, so I believe that's fuel saving. They don't want to put so much RPM through the engine. They use a bit less of the engine braking and probably use a bit more of the KERS harvesting to simulate what you'd get if you were just using the engine itself. Hamilton extremely close, and again, well, Webber, he's been almost caught out by that move earlier, but Hamilton's in a good position for DRS.
Let's see then, can Hamilton go on the attack? Is there any room for Lewis Hamilton? Not really. And Mark Webber knows that very clearly, just maintains his position. Of course, he did it for lap after lap last year, Mark Webber, with Nico Rosberg behind him when he went on to take the victory. Well,
just looking down the field, the only one in the top 10 who can't use DRS on that lap was Vettel, because he was 1.4 seconds behind Rosberg. So if everyone's using it, it just gets neutralised.
Little lock up from Hamilton. Back down the hill they come, and you can see Rosberg a bit further ahead. Hamilton, who lost that second place with the intervention of the first safety car, didn't work for him at all, but Rosberg was able to maintain the lead, and Hamilton wants that second place back. But first of all, he's got to try and get third.
He's getting closer.
Yeah, he is close. Is he close enough to attack down into the chicane? Not yet. Not prepared to take that gamble just yet, perhaps.
Yeah, Mark driving with an eye on the mirror. And, well, that's Lewis just trying to fill Mark's mirrors with his car. He's not really looking to try and overtake down into the back.
Remember, Kimi Raikkonen, the only one of this group that's on the yellow-walled soft tyre. Maybe he's hoping that they're all going to be really struggling at the end of the stint. They know they can do these lap times on the soft tyre anyway. So that will be one to watch. Hamilton again, very, very close to the back of Webber then. All the way down towards Saint-Devote. I say all the way though, it's such a short section really. When you compare it to other circuits, there's just not the space, and Nicole watching closely to see whether her man's going to be able to get another podium finish for Mercedes, match those 2 third places he's had already this year. Meanwhile, Perez behind Raikkonen, no change there. You can see the McLaren, and then you've got Alonso. It's a bit of pressure from Button and Adrian Sutil tucked behind.
Somebody's going to get impatient at a certain point and have a little dive.
Yeah, you would think so, wouldn't you? You can't see this lasting all the way to the flag without something happening to somebody. And they are racing drivers. They might do as they're told in terms to keeping to a pace for a certain length of time, but when the checker flag is approaching, they will go for it. Lap times 1:21.6, still not perhaps as quick as I would have expected to see. It does feel as though they're still looking after those tyres.
No, totally. Vettel's just sat in there, settling for the second place. Here's one of the Force Indias having a go down. That's Adrian Sutil passing Jenson Button.
That's a good move, isn't it?
Yeah, it was indeed.
Button saw him, but that was good positioning by Sutil. And Adrian Sutil has just got himself up into 8th place as a result of that. So Sutil, who had a 7th place finish in Australia at the start of this year, but has had a lot of bad luck since then. This is more like it, and 7th place, or 8th place rather, for him is definitely a bit of a boost. So he's going to be after Alonso next. I wonder if Alonso would be quite as kind.
Well, he's certainly hassling the back of him as Alonso's trying to manage the gap to the car in front. And coming back to what we were saying earlier, the contrast between those who are in the championship battle and those who are just trying to maximise, you know, these 1 or 2 opportunities during the year to get some big points.
On board with Hamilton again, chasing after Mark Webber. Sutil, as I say, behind Alonso and Perez. Perez not that close to the back of Kimi Raikkonen as they flash through the tunnel there. Fantastic shot, but all the time Rosberg has just built himself a 1.8 second lead. You just saw him
look
go
at
through.
there, Perez is through.
Raikkonen has to cut the chicane.
But Perez did as well, Ben, so he won't have to give the place back.
So a different situation to last time with Alonso, but Perez on the attack once again. I wasn't expecting that because as they went into the tunnel, he was quite a long way back, wasn't he?
He's just, you know, waiting till he sees the car in front braking, counting 1, and then hitting the brakes. So brave stuff, giving us some entertainment. But he wasn't able to get round the curve, the second part of that chicane. If he had, of course, then, well, Raikkonen would have had to have done exactly what Alonso did and give the place up.
Yeah, so it is good fun to see that Perez is prepared to take it to them. Let's see what happened here.
Very late, very, very late. So the downside of that type of driving is you're just basically giving the guy no option. He can't turn in, otherwise there'll be contact. And if you can't keep yourself within the racing circuit itself, which is defined by the white lines, then that's got to be deemed as a slightly marginal attempt at an overtake. But, well, if you don't have a go, you'll never know.
And I guess, having learnt what he's learnt from his move on Alonso, that it worked and that the stewards backed him up, he's thinking, well, do the same again, get there and force them.
Okay, Checo, this level of time management is very good. This will definitely get us to the end. Let's keep going. This is really good.
I wonder if he said that before or after the lock-up attempt to get past.
I suspect it was before.
So Perez is still there, but yeah, you do wonder on those tactics a little bit. There he is, Alonso chased by Sutil, and then Jenson Button. Jean-Eric Vergne is still 10th. Di Resta, by the way, is still in 11th place in the other Force India. Then we've got Ricciardo is behind Hulkenberg. And then we've got Grosjean down in 14th place. Bottas is in 15th. Then Gutierrez, Van der Garde, who is the leader of the younger teams, because Van der Garde is ahead of Chilton. Chilton, of course, had that penalty earlier. And he's now back in 18th place. And Bianchi is still running in 19th place. 3 cars out. Those of Charles Pic, Felipe Massa and Pastor Maldonado. Back with Lewis Hamilton. Let's now hear from Hamilton first.
Okay, Lewis, think about traction. 3,800 that lap.
I'm trying to get past there.
Yeah, I agree with you, Lewis. You just need the tyres at the end.
A little bit of discussion going on there. There's the racer, and side by side the Sutil on Alonso, but of course he's on the outside this time, and there's no way through. Well, I mentioned that Pastor Maldonado's out of this race. Let's hear from him. He's talking to Lee.
Pastor, first of all, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. Just some contusions. It was a very big impact, but a bit disappointing because the race was still going, you know, and Chilton maybe doesn't look at the car on the outside. On the braking point, I just take off with his win.
You were surprised that Max Chilton moved across on you?
Yeah, for sure. It was it's very narrow, you know, the point, and he crossed my way.
So just having another quick look at the attempt of Sutil to get past Alonso, but that wasn't on. We are now riding on board with Adrian Sutil as he tries to get a little closer to the back of the Ferrari, but having a great race here, Sutil. Back in Formula 1, of course, this year after a year out last season, and he's been pretty impressive with his driving, but as I say, a bit out of luck. That cross-threaded wheel nut last time out in Spain certainly cost him the opportunity to score points. He had an incident in Bahrain when Massa cut his tyre on the opening lap, so that also kept him out of the points. And then they both had a pit stop issue in Malaysia, so points have been taken away when they've been on offer. Sutil does see that chance here today, there's no doubt about it. Still got some way to go though. 22 laps remain in this race, and you do wonder if they're all going to be able to push to the end on this set of tyres.
Well, that's the plan. Rosberg getting that gap open to 2.7 seconds last time around, so he's controlling this race, looking very strong out front.
Yeah, he's certainly able to lap at the pace he wants, isn't he? He was, what, 7/10 quicker than anyone last time around, was Nico Rosberg, or certainly the group behind him anyway. Just watching here on board Sergio Perez as he gets that little bit closer to the back of the Lotus. Interestingly, Gutierrez has just come over the radio. Now, he's down in 16th place, but he doesn't think they're going to be able to get to the end on the Super Soft. So there we are, early indication that some drivers are already beginning to struggle with the super soft tyres if they're trying to get all the way to the end. And well, you never know, maybe Raikkonen's decision to put the soft tyre on will work for him. I doubt the lead teams are going to be in quite the same trouble as perhaps the Sauber, but let's just wait and see. Sutil again, very close. You see the front bouncing in the air there.
Yeah, the apex.
He's coming down the inside, Sutil on Alonso, and he's done it again. Lovely move from Adrian Sutil, and he's got past one of the hardest races in the business, Fernando Alonso.
Well, that was a very compliant Fernando Alonso. So does he have an issue this afternoon? He certainly didn't defend the inside, knowing that Sutil had been hunting him down.
Well, the Force India working brilliantly well. Let's take another look here.
No, as we said, couldn't have left the door any wider open. It's like, please overtake me. He almost clips the back of Perez.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, he nearly clipped the rear wing. And great reaction in the Force India pit to that. Sutil now is in 7th place then. Matches his best finish here at Monaco in the past, and the best finish that Force India have ever had at this track. But it's still Rosberg who leads for Mercedes. The two Red Bulls are 2nd and 3rd. Then the other Mercedes of Hamilton. Now, who's next on Sutil's list? Well, it will be Sergio Perez.
Yeah, this could get messy.
Could be fireworks coming up here, because Sutil has got what appears to be the quickest car of the lead group. Does look after its tyres well, the Force India, and has shown that throughout the season.
Well, maybe they know that they'll have to stop again this afternoon. You've got to imagine they would hope that they would have been able to get to the end of this set of tyres, but they've either just found an absolute sweet spot and it's allowing them to be racy. The pace, as we already discussed, is quite slow relative to what they were doing in free practice in the long runs.
Yeah, Paul Di Resta currently running in 11th, and the other Force India, of course, he was a big winner with that race being interrupted, because he was doing a long stint on a set of tyres and he got a free new set of tyres out of it, but he's still just outside the points. As you're watching the front runners here, Kimi Raikkonen still tucked in close behind Lewis Hamilton. Over the curbs they come, and there's Sutil then, not quite there with Sergio Perez. A few years ago, Sutil was running in 4th place in the Grand Prix in the damp race. It was the 2008 race, and actually got wiped out by Kimi Raikkonen. That would have been his best result here, but sadly it wasn't to be on that occasion. I wonder how much more progress he can make in the remaining parts of this race. Still a little way to go as they head down in towards Sanderot, the corner we saw Felipe Massa crash out of earlier on today. But apart from the Massa crash and the Maldonado incident, there's been pretty good reliability from all of the teams. The only other car we've seen out is that one of Charles Pic, the Caterham, which caught fire, nearly got it back to the pits, but not quite.
And Checo, just for more info, Sutil is car behind. He's been attacking and overtaking cars on the inside of Lowe's, so just be careful when you go through there. He may attack you in the same way.
Yeah, I did wonder if he might get a message to that effect.
Yeah, he doesn't have his television tuned in on his steering wheel, of course, so he's not seeing the action behind him. He'll be aware of what car's behind him, but that's a bit of vital information from his race engineer.
Yeah, very useful indeed. Sutil closing up very much under braking as normal, the concertina effect into the chicane, and just looking down the order, no changes further back. Bottas down in 15th place, just going a little quicker through the first sector than he has done so far in this race, having his baptism, of course, of driving at Monaco. Never raced anything here, didn't race Formula 3 or GP3 or GP2, any of the feeder levels. So his first ever race is this one, and it's not been a particularly straightforward one, with a safety car period and a race interrupted. So all good learning, of course, for a rookie driver like Bottas.
Yeah, he'll be a wiser man next year when he comes to this racetrack. He was struggling a little bit for pace relative to Maldonado through the free practice and qualifying sessions. First time here on the Monaco circuit, and it can be a bit daunting. You can never see round the corners here, all those high barriers.
I've got a yellow flag down in sector 1. I'm not quite sure what that's about. We'll see if something comes up. You can see the yellow at the top of your screen on the lap chart up there, so that indicates a yellow flag somewhere around the track. Might be some debris, so we'll try and keep an eye out for that. It's a double yellow, in fact, so then presumably there must have been some incident. We'll get a hopefully get a look at that in a moment. Gary, while we're waiting to find out what the yellow flag has... Oh, no, it's a Marussia off. It's a Marussia, it's Bianchi.
In the barrier, Ben.
Yeah, and dear, their day doesn't really get any better, does it? So Jules Bianchi, local to Monaco, but let's just see where this has happened first of all, shall we? And it's coming down into Saint-Devote. Ahead of him, Guido van der Garde. He locks the inside wheel, comes off the brake, and then just locks everything up, and oh, he's into the barrier. Gary, what are your thoughts on that one?
Well, yeah, that's a genuine mistake. Obviously, we saw Massa have a couple of those ones there, but they were really big ones. That's not too bad. I mean, he's been driving a sort of limping car a little bit, I think, in the last part of it there, so I think that's day over there. Not a great day for him.
Now, we've just been talking about tyres a little bit because we'd heard that Gutierrez was saying he might struggle to get to the end on these super soft tyres. Are you surprised only Raikkonen of the front runners decided to go for the slightly harder tyre on the restart?
Yes, I am, because most of these guys had new sets of the soft tyre, the yellow sidewall tyre, and only used sets of the red sidewall tyre, super softs. So I'm surprised at that for a start. Now, if you also look at the beginning of the race, Fernando Alonso was very slow at the beginning on his super soft tyres. On the soft tyre in the mid-stint, he was pretty competitive, and now he's dropped away again. He's lost a lot of time, but he's also lost a lot of position. So, yeah, that was a strange decision for Ferrari to make.
Now, these lap times still pretty slow, aren't they? I mean, we're deep into the race, but they're doing 1:21s at the race lead and 1:22s behind.
Well, we heard earlier, Nico Rosberg's engineer told him he had 60% of the tyre left. So Nico knows he's pulling away from Sebastian Vettel 4.1 seconds. Nico knows he's just driving a car, he's just making sure he doesn't spin the wheels, do nothing wrong, but just keep yourself out of the aggro. You don't want the guy, you don't want to have to spend too much time looking in your mirrors. So yeah, they are slow lap times, but most people are trying to get to lap 78 now without wearing a tyre out.
Still got the yellow flags down there. There is Lewis Hamilton as he continues to chase after Mark Webber and up the hill. Just a quick word from you, Gary. Of course, technical director of Jordan, as it used to be. Nowadays, in its modern version, it's Force India, and Adrian Sutil's been making some great moves, hasn't he?
Yeah, fantastic. Down into Lowe's hairpin there. Now, one of the things you need to have there is confidence on the steering lock and confidence on the front of the car. If you watch the Ferrari, it understeers through there quite a lot. So Alonso couldn't pull off that move, but Sutil could come down in there, lay on the brakes, up the inside, turn the steering wheel, and the front of the car responds. Lowe's hairpin, that's the most important thing you ever need.
And of course, we saw Di Resta make some good moves earlier on the outside at Saint-Devote too.
Yeah,
so.
no, the majority of overtaking manoeuvres go down to Force India. Well done.
Yeah, well done to them. Well, we'll see whether he's going to be able to do any more. Sutil is still in 7th place behind Sergio Perez, so it's all settled down there a bit as we continue to tick the laps away. Typical Monaco, where sometimes you get these phases of the race where now something's happened because of
two cars. There's a Force India as well.
Grosjean, and is it a Force India? Yeah, try and spot what that car is. I can certainly tell you Romain Grosjean's one of those two cars down. The Ricciardo, it's a Toro Rosso, okay. I think. And look at the damaged front wing wiped off on Romain Grosjean's car. So there you are, just as you think everything is sorted and settled at Monaco, something happens. Now let's take a look and see what occurred. Ooh, tangle on the way into the chicane there.
No, I think it hit him even before they got to the turning in point there. So disagreeing, yeah.
It's a fast section too.
Yeah.
And there we go, let's take another look here. Oh, just ran into the back.
Well, you've got to say, Grosjean was looking good so far this season. It seems he'd got over the demons of his recklessness of the past. And then, as far as I can count, that's his 3rd crash, this 4th crash. There you go, I can't count. And I could have done it on one hand.
Only just, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it just goes to show that speed is not enough. And you need to be able to, you've got to be able to think smart and finish the races that you can't win.
The word is that he's on a kind of rolling contract every 3 races they're assessing. This is race 6. That means there's another assessment coming at the end of this race. I wonder how that conversation's going to go.
Well, not good. He's done a lot of damage. I don't believe the Lotus team are flush with cash, and whether you like it or not, damaging noses and suspension parts, well, that all comes out of the production line, and they have to go and then rebuild all those parts. They bring extra spare parts to Monaco expecting to have some incidents, but I don't think they expect their driver to have 4 crashes. You might expect them to do it once properly.
Safety car is out. Safety car is on circuit now. I guess there's too much debris down at the chicane.
Yeah, we've seen already from Pirelli this year, they've complained that some of the delaminations have been down to cuts and what have you in the tyre, so race control not taking any chances. Last thing you want is a delamination of the tyre around the streets of Monte Carlo. So once again, what was already quite a close race is going to be even closer.
Gutierrez is in, so he confirms the fact that he was struggling on tyres there. Max Chilton is in the pits in the Marussia as well. So a couple of teams struggling on tyres towards the lower end of the order and have had to come in for another set, not able to make it through to the end of the race. There's Max Chilton stopping, changing his softs for a set of super soft tyres to get to the end of the race now. And well, it's been a tough afternoon for him. Finished runner-up here in the GP2 race last year, did Max Chilton, but of course fighting at the lower end of the grid in the Marussia here today. On board the safety car now, looking back at the race leader Nico Rosberg. Tom, what have you got for us?
Ben, I was just going to say it's really frustrating to get this safety car out, because I was looking forward to seeing what lap times Grosjean was going to be able to do in clear air, so then we'd be able to make a judgment just how slow and how controlled Nico Rosberg has been at the front, so we could actually make a case just to see, you know, whether it was going to be possible to get to the end of the race. And of course we're now not going to see that, because the field is going to bunch right up.
No, that's right. Tom, we were just talking before the race began. Now we've got a little bit of peace and quiet, relatively, until they come past you. But we'll just take a look at this first, David. We'll just see how this began. Through the tunnel, of course. Ricciardo then holding the middle ground.
Well, Grosjean's just made a mistake, rammed into the back of them. There was plenty of space down the inside if he wanted to have a go there. And the Toro Rosso driver completely blameless. And I would expect Grosjean will get a further penalty from the stewards, unquestionably, for, you know, he's got form.
David, is there a tricky bump on the exit of the tunnel there? Could that be the why Grosjean messed up so badly?
That's a good point. The tricky bit starts when you leave the garage and it continues until the race finishes. It is tricky all the way around Monaco, so that's no excuse, I'm afraid.
There you have it. Tom, we were talking about engines earlier on today. I mentioned that Honda, of course, are coming back to McLaren in a couple of years' time for 2015. But there's been a bit more news about engines. What can you tell us from this event that we've learned?
You're absolutely right, Ben. So this morning, Renault president Carlos Ghosn gave a press conference on the Red Bull motor, or the Red Bull float, announcing that Renault would be supplying both Red Bull Racing and Toro Rosso in 2014. And he also said that Renault need a minimum of 3 manufacturers. Sorry just to interrupt myself, but I see Grosjean coming back into the pits in front of me up there, and it looks like it's game over for him. But so they need 3 teams to make a go of it in 2014. They've announced 2, both Red Bull cars, and there's all sorts of speculation as to who else is going to be using the Renault engine next year. Now, Williams currently use their engine, the current V8, but a story's broken this weekend that they're perhaps going to use the Mercedes engine next year, so that would be one less for Renault. And then you've also got Lotus. They're currently using the Renault engine, and it's thought that they will continue. But one of the reasons there's so much discussion is there's a big discrepancy in the costs of next year's engine, because it's a sort of whole powertrain, because we've got the turbo engine coming back, and there's all Kurz is being ramped up. Renault's engine is thought to be costing about 23 million euros, the Mercedes 18 and the Ferrari 16. So that's a big sort of source of negotiation for all the teams, but it's looking like we're going to have perhaps just 4 teams using the Renault, the two Red Bulls, the Caterham and the Lotus.
Thank you, Tom. In the meantime, we've been shown some artistic shots by the director of a collared dove getting out of the way, I'm glad to say.
What was that cartoon? Was it Wacky Races, where you had to catch the pigeon?
Yes, that's right. And he failed there. Yeah, so anyway, let's just update you with where we are at. We're on lap number 66 out of 78. We are under the 2nd safety car period, but it's the 3rd interruption in the race.
Okay, Kimi, we're losing water from the engine because it's too hot. We're losing water from the engine because it's too hot.
Right, that's not a good sign. What can he do about it as a driver? Anything?
He can cool the engine by running longer gears, but other than that, he can do nothing.
Right, so really tricky there. And we'll see whether that's going to cause major problems for Kimi Räikkönen. It could well do. It's presumably, if he's having that problem, some of the others might be getting overheating.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. You know, cooling is an issue around here, and running behind the safety car, you're just not getting the air passing through, getting rammed through the radiators. So you just, you know, the guys are trying to keep the tyres warm. You can see again Rosberg hassling the safety car, telling him to get a move on. And poor Bernd Maylander, well, he's driving the wheels off that thing. It's just, you know, it's, what is it, over 2 tons of vehicle there supplied by Mercedes. And you've got these little nimble racing cars behind them.
Feast or famine for Bernd Maylander, though, isn't it? He hasn't done anything all year, and now suddenly he's been out there a couple of times. So
well, that's right. And the other thing, of course, is a lot of corners on this track, and you can see Bernd not even attempting to go through the chicane there.
So we're getting ready for the restart. The safety car is going to be heading back in, and once again Nico Rosberg has the job of lining everybody up and getting the restart underway. They've had a chance to look after their tyres a bit more. Can they go on the attack? Nico Rosberg launches it up the hill out of Raskas into the Anthony No corner. Vettel will try to go with him, and Hamilton, of course, will be one to watch from 4th position as he tries to chase down Mark Webber. Romain Grosjean is definitely out of this race now. The incident between himself and Daniel Ricciardo, which caused this safety car, well, we've seen Grosjean retire, and Ricciardo obviously is out as well. So we're gradually adding to our list of retirements. There are still 16 cars running in the Monaco Grand Prix, and right now it's Nico Rosberg in charge, and we're keeping an eye there on Adrian Sutil under pressure from Fernando Alonso.
Alonso will be keen to try and get that place back, but Sutil goes defensive as they run down into lows. But Alonso's got to be careful. He keeps taking that wide line. It almost looks like he doesn't have enough steering lock to be able to get the car around there on the tight line. And as Gary Anderson mentioned earlier, a lot of understeer at low speed in that Ferrari, but it does leave him vulnerable in that turn.
So watch them down towards the chicane, over the bumps. Perez taking it out fairly wide. Raikkonen, though, really under some pressure. Di Resta in the back of the shot as well, right at the back of this queue. He's still in 11th place. And by the way, a quick note to mention that the Caterham driver, Guido van der Garde, is currently running in 14th place. Now, if he could get one more place, he would then get Caterham to match Marussia in terms of a race result this year.
My left front is raining heavily.
Well, that's interesting. Graining for Lewis Hamilton on his left front. Just quickly explain what that means to him, David.
Well, that means that he, as the surface of the tyre tears and grains, and you can see the marbles on the side of the track there, well, it goes through that process of tearing the rubber across the surface. It generates understeer, and that means less front grip on the front axle. So when he tries to turn the car, it just doesn't respond. You can see his drop back from Webber slightly. It's not a good message to hear, that's for sure, for the race engineers. I'm sure he's just went, oh bother.
Well, of course, we did hear that message from the race engineer earlier saying take it easy because we know we're a little bit marginal. We're back with Sergio Perez here, and Perez is still behind both Hamilton and Raikkonen. Raikkonen is his first target. Just listening.
The contrasting styles on the McLaren Mercedes, they changed down the gears very early, and when you compare that to some in-car footage and audio of the Mercedes that has this very lazy late down change.
Yeah, interesting contrast, and you can still hear how carefully he's picking up the throttle out of the chicane too. Still very sensitive on the power, not flooring it early, and a bit of a lock-up behind. Didn't quite see who that was. I don't think it ended with any problems. Verne still holding on to the final points paying position at the moment. Jean-Eric Verne in 10th place. I think he might have a bit of pressure on him though from Paul Di Resta. There you just saw them flash through. Di Resta very close there to the back of Jean-Eric Verne, and that could be one to watch in the remaining laps of this. So we are into the sort of final 10-lap sprint of this elongated Monaco Grand Prix. Some 19 minutes on the clock still remaining. I don't think we're going to have a problem with running out of time, but it is going to go quite a long way to the 2-hour maximum, of course. There is Di Resta then closing up on Jean-Eric Verne.
Paul looking to try and see if he can inch closer to the points. That is the battle over the final point this afternoon. So a lot at stake. Jean-Eric Verne's having his strongest weekend, it has to be said. Qualifying in the top 10 for the first time. Running with the helmet colours of Francois Sever as Perez has missed the chicane.
Oh, Raikkonen's got damage, I think, or did he just...
Well, he was buzzing up the rear.
Yeah, maybe not.
Something went on there. Now, did they both miss the chicane again? And Raikkonen looked like he burned out the tyres, left big black lines as Well, let's wait and see. We'll get the replay.
Watch Sutil, who's trying to take advantage of all this, because he's behind Perez and Alonso. Then you've got Button in there as well. It's all stacking up. It is all stacking up now as we build towards the climax of this Monaco Grand Prix. Nico Rosberg still out in front. Vettel is second. Webber in third place. But the minor places could be on for change here. Raikkonen has got going again, so it wasn't. Let's see what happened here.
Well, Perez does what he's been doing, goes down the inside, there's contact, there's double contact, and I think Raikkonen was basically saying, well, look, mate, you gave me no choice the last time. It was, I'm coming through or a crash. Well, this time, you're going to crash. So Perez maybe just got a little bit cheeky this afternoon. He's got away with it a few times, but you run out of luck eventually.
Amazing that both cars are still running, but the damage obviously on the front of Perez's car, and he's still at the moment in that 6th place. Now, is he going to be able to hang on to that? I wonder. It's not going to be easy for him.
Well,
but
someone lost some carbon fibre. It was difficult to see if it was the rear underbody of the Lotus or it's the front wing end plates. Let's have a look at the McLaren.
Still running in that queue, no doubt about it.
Look, Raikkonen struggling. His car's damaged, you can see that. So I think the bodywork came off Raikkonen's car. And look at that, he's just stacking everyone up.
Oh, this could be the end of an amazing run of points finishes for Kimi. Look at it, he can't turn it in at all. No. Look at Alonso in the bunching, but Button's got up the inside.
He's damaged, he's punctured.
Button's got past Alonso as a result of that, as Kimi Raikkonen comes into the pits. Oh, damage on the Lotus as a result of contact with Sergio Perez. Is the tyre punctured as well? Maybe that's what it was ultimately, a kind of slow puncture.
Yeah.
This will drop him out of the points and could bring to an end his amazing points run. He was within 2 Grand Prix of matching the record of Michael Schumacher. But look at this now, Perez, we expect damage. There is damage, I think, a little bit on his car as well, and he's under pressure from Adrian Sutil and then Jenson Button.
Yeah, that's clearly disappointing for Raikkonen. It'll be interesting to see what the steward's view on that is, whether they feel they need to look at that incident after the race. You can look at it, I'm sure we'll get a replay, you can look at it a couple of ways. Perez has rolled the dice once too many times. You could also say that Raikkonen was continuing to close the door as they went all the way into the braking zone.
Sutil very close to the back of the McLaren there, and you can definitely see that Perez hasn't got the pace he had earlier. Now, let's see where Button got past Alonso.
Well, a cheeky little move there from Jenson, good stuff. And Fernando, well, not having a great afternoon, but Jenson saw the opportunity as they all backed up behind Raikkonen, and he slipped through.
Yeah, took full advantage. Replay of the Perez-Raikkonen incident here, I think.
Well, he dives down the inside, but the gap's closing because Raikkonen's heading for his turn. So, you can see already he's got the damage on the back of that car. I've got to say that I think that was just a step too far for Perez. I don't want to take anything away from his great passes so far this afternoon, but you just can't sort of keep expecting cars to move out of the way.
Tom, what have you got for us?
Well, Ben, I had a very quick look at, sorry, I should say a very good look as Kimi Raikkonen came past me in the pit lane after that pit stop, and yes, there was a lot of damage to his tyre, as we've commented on already. I couldn't actually see any outward bodywork damage to the left side of his car. That's not to say it wasn't there, but he didn't look in too bad a shape, but we mustn't forget that he's got those water temperature problems, and is that going to compromise the power of his engine? We need to find out.
Okay, well, Perez has definitely got a damaged front wing on his McLaren, and that's certainly why he's struggling now to fend off the likes of Sutil, Button, Alonso, who's down in 8th place now. Verne is zipped into 9th and Di Resta to 10th, of course, because Raikkonen has dropped out of the points. Raikkonen now going quickly, but he's all the way down in 16th place. So it has brought Di Resta into a points-paying position here in 10th place. 11th now is Hulkenberg. Bottas is 12th. It's brought, Gutierrez has just been in and is going quickly, of course, on his relatively new tyres. Van der Garde is still in 14th position, and in fact, if you add the various results that Marussia and Caterham have had so far this year, Caterham would need a 12th place finish to move ahead of Marussia down at the lower end of the table for 10th spot in the Constructors' Championship, and that means they need two ahead to come together and perhaps not finish the race. Well, you wouldn't say that's impossible, looking at this lot, would you? Because they're all bunched up behind Sergio Perez.
Well, Perez, his last time around, 21.4. Compare that to race leader Rosberg, 19.0. So you can see just how much slower he's going now with the damage to his car. And, well, it's an expensive train of traffic.
Raikkonen absolutely flying now, a 1:17.9, but, well, he's got a long way to go. And, of course, he's... Oh, and straight through the chicane goes Perez this time now. What happens there? Does he have to give up the place because he just went straight through the chicane?
Yes. They weren't attempting to overtake him, but clearly you can't gain advantage by cutting corners. He might there. I think he's got some real damage to his car. I wouldn't be surprised. Just keep an eye on the McLaren boys. Will they have to pit for tyres?
Oh,
Look at that.
He's in trouble, real trouble. He's got to surely get in, but he can't, because the cars are in the way. Last year he got done and he's pulled off. He's pulled off. And the smoke around the rear tyre, it's all over for Sergio Perez. That's one out of the way for Guido van der Garde in the Caterham. That'll bring him up to 13th position as a result of that. So that will help their chances. Take another look at this.
Well, you can see he's got that issue on the right rear. The rear suspension, I think, must be damaged. He tries to go for the pit. Button's there. And then there's no choice for him but to just move the car around at the last corner and park it.
Yeah, just as well he didn't try and get into the pits at that point, otherwise he would have taken his teammate off. And he, as I say, he did that on Raikkonen, although Raikkonen wasn't perhaps quite as alongside last year. So Adrian Sutil is now in 5th position, which would be Force India's best ever result. It would be his best ever result in Monaco, I'm talking. But what an achievement. He's driven well, he's been patient, but he's also been attacking. It means Button is now in 6th, Alonso is 7th, Jean-Eric Vergne has moved up to 8th, Di Resta is now 9th, and Hulkenberg comes into the points in 10th. Now, Van der Garde, actually, I said that Van der Garde would be up one, but no, Raikkonen is got ahead of Van der Garde, despite that earlier pit stop, and that means that Van der Garde is still in 14th, so he hasn't gained another position as yet.
Well, 3 laps remaining, anything can happen in Monaco, so it might still be possible for the Caterham car.
Well, what about Nico Rosberg, of course? He is still our race leader, and although we're concentrating on all the action that's going on behind him, up front, Nico Rosberg has indeed controlled the race beautifully so far. There are the 2 Red Bulls and the 2nd Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton. Well, Hamilton's had a couple of podiums with Mercedes this year, but Nico is yet to score a podium this season with them.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it, that Nico's out there about to win his 2nd Grand Prix, fantastic at the front, and we're not seeing a great deal of him. So from a sort of publicity point of view, we're not getting to see his sponsors and his car, but we're seeing this battle down the back.
Mark Webber heading for another great result here in Monaco. It might not be the victory that he enjoyed last year, and of course Sebastian Vettel, his teammate, is ahead, but nonetheless they are looking at a double podium finish here, and that's got to be something to mark, because he has such a great result here. He's finished in the top 5 on 6 previous occasions. This would be the 7th time that he's finished top 5 at Monaco, and you don't do that by accident, do you?
No, he's got the skills. He feels comfortable in the close confines of the barriers that you have around here. We do have a few street circuits. Singapore, of course, we had Valencia in the past, but nothing quite like this.
No, this is the toughest, most demanding street track of them all, and looking down as we come through Mirabeau down towards Lowe's, it flattens the track out, that camera, because it really does drop steeply down here, as you can see a little more from that camera. Downhill again to Poitiers to run alongside the Mediterranean, looking resplendent today in the bright blue sky above. And well, it's been a race of incident. It certainly hasn't necessarily been a particularly exciting race from Nico Rosberg's point of view, because he's always been in command. He's always been in charge every restart, and he's just been able to drive away from the others. And Mercedes do really seem to have nailed the problem of the tyre use, at least here in Monaco, where of course the tyres are under much different conditions than they are on fast circuits like Barcelona. Now you're riding with Paul Di Resta. He is currently in the points. He's in 9th. Jean-Eric Vergne is ahead of him, and then only a little ahead of them both is Fernando Alonso. Now there's a surprise. Would you have expected a Toro Rosso of Jean-Eric Vergne to be quite so close to Fernando Alonso's Ferrari?
No, I think it shows the difficulty he's having here this afternoon. Ferrari is a much better car than they had this time last year, but it just hasn't worked for him around Monaco on these tyres. So still opportunity for either Vergne or Di Resta to better their position.
Also interesting, David, that Hülkenberg and Bottas crossed the line together a moment ago, and they're both fighting over the final point. And remember that Williams have not scored any points at all so far this year. Bottas is having a real go at trying to get past the Sauber of Nico Hülkenberg, and it was, as I say, a moment ago it was a dead heat. Now they're 0.2 of a second apart.
Well, there's no point, literally, for finishing 11th. You've got to go for it.
Yeah, Bottas has finished 11th once already this year. He won't want another one. And there could be something between them in the closing moments of this race. But from the point of view of the championship, of course, Sebastian Vettel will still be leading the championship after this race. His nearest rival, Kimi Räikkönen, is not going to score points by the looks of things here today. Kimi is currently down in 13th position, and it will bring to an end a remarkable run of point-scoring finishes. He still maintains his finishing record if he gets to the end, but it won't be in the points this time. And great shame. It was the incident, of course. Well, very quick lap suddenly from Vettel. A 1:16.5. Now that shows you how careful they have been. He's just gone 2 seconds faster than anyone else.
I'm going to say something that I'll probably regret. This is rubbish. They have to do that.
That is a huge chunk of time at this stage in the race. Suddenly he is 2 seconds faster than he's gone before, that anyone else around him has gone before. And Sebastian Vettel perhaps just trying to prove a point here, but Nico Rosberg is still in command. He has this very comfortable advantage as he comes down into the chicane.
Sebastian, you know the score, don't take any risks. All right, that's enough. Not getting any more points for that.
But satisfaction.
But satisfaction, he said.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can understand it. But here we go then. Nico Rosberg, final few corners coming up. On his right-hand side at the anti-no corner, he's going past a bronze statue of Juan Manuel Fangio and the Mercedes W196. They never won here, but Nico Rosberg wins in Monaco. He has repeated the performance of his father here 30 years ago. Second place goes to Sebastian Vettel. Mark Webber finishes in third place. It's double podium for Red Bull. Mercedes of Hamilton finishes in fourth. He lost that second place under the first safety car. Adrian Sutil gets his best finish in Monaco with fifth. Button comes home in sixth position. Alonso struggling in the end to seventh. Verne is eighth. Di Resta a solid ninth. Good drive that from Paul Di Resta from 17th on the grid. And who's going to get 10th? I'll tell you in a moment when they cross the line. It is Räikkönen. Räikkönen got 10th. Where did that come from?
There must have been an incident between the other two, and that's allowed Räikkönen to slip through.
Wow, he does maintain his point-scoring record. He can still beat the record of Michael Schumacher, and somehow Räikkönen on the new tyres finished in 10th place. But it's Nico Rosberg who has taken only his second ever career win, his first podium of the season. And it's the first win for Mercedes around the streets of Monaco since 1937, would you believe? They never won under Formula One rules, but Grand Prix racing existed before the Second World War. They had a run of 3 wins here.
You've done it. Well done, mate.
Monaco Grand Prix, can't believe it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. The car was really awesome today. This is really special for me.
Very well done, Nico. I couldn't imagine you driving any better than today. Fantastic job. With all the events going on, you managed it perfectly. Great job.
His favourite football team won last night. He took pole position in Monaco. He has won the Monaco Grand Prix. It couldn't get better than that. Rosberg the winner then. Vettel and Webber take double podium for Red Bull, but for the first time in 4 years they are beaten, and Rosberg becomes the 4th different winner this year. Hamilton 4th, Sutil 5th ahead of Button and Alonso. Verne, Di Resta and Räikkönen completing the points finishers, but a number of non-finishers. Quite a lot of incident, as we would always expect to see here at Monaco. But what a race it has been. Nico Rosberg taking the victory. And his hometown, where he's grown up. Yes, he's German nationality, but this is where he spent all his life, basically, and he knows these roads probably better than anyone. But today, he has achieved his dream of winning the most prestigious Grand Prix on the calendar.
That's fantastic. Great drive. He's been supreme all weekend.
To savour these moments for him. You know, when you think about how he dealt with the arrival of Michael Schumacher at that Mercedes team and showed himself to be as strong, if not stronger, than Michael Schumacher, and everyone wondered, well, Schumacher perhaps passed his best. And now he's responded to the challenge from Lewis Hamilton and is proving every bit as quick, if not quicker. He's out-qualified him at the last 3 Grand Prix. He has kept his head in a difficult race today, but the smile tells the story. Just watch this. Nico Rosberg wins in Monaco. And David, Red Bull, I mean, a great day for them. You took their first ever podium here in Monaco, and now they've ended up with a double podium. Let's just look at those points. Raikkonen is still second, Alonso in 3rd place, but Vettel's been able to open up the gap up front further down the order. Verne adding to his points tally. Adrian Sutil also moving up to 11th place, courtesy of a good result. And Red Bull, with that double podium finish, extend their lead in the Constructors' Championship. Ferrari 2nd, Lotus in 3rd place. Mercedes now getting in touch with Lotus. Look how much difference it's made to them. 4th in the championship, but Lotus really under threat now from Mercedes.
They are indeed. And then Nico, well, remembering you've got to put your steering wheel back on, otherwise they fine you, even if you've just won the Grand Prix. But fantastic day for him.
So Mercedes last year, remember, he finished in 2nd place.
That's his girlfriend there, sorry Ben.
Yeah.
But that's a nice moment. Isn't the podium here in Monaco so special? The fact that everyone's there with the driver.
Indeed. He walks over. Quick chat with Mark Webber. And there, of course, the architect of all of this, Ross Brawn, still very much the man in charge at Mercedes. And he has delivered a victory. Only the 2nd victory, of course, since Mercedes have come back into Formula One after the dominant form they had in the early part of Formula One's history in the 1950s, but back since 2010 and up now to receive the trophy. His Serene Highness Prince Albert, the Sovereign Prince of Monaco, handing over the trophy for victory to Nico Rosberg. They have had some disappointing weekends, David, in the last couple with going backwards, but they certainly can make up for it on this occasion. Sebastian Vettel, though, will be satisfied to have further extended that points advantage. That's what it's all about from his point of view. And Fernando Alonso and Kimi Raikkonen did not get out of Monaco what they were hoping to achieve. And Mark Webber gets on the podium yet again here. What a consistent finisher he is on the streets of the Principality. And Ross Brawn picks up the Constructors' Trophy. Well, Paddy Lowe starts with that team next week. It'll be a good week to join. The German national anthem for both driver and team on this occasion, of course, as Nico Rosberg wins for Mercedes. And, well, we talked about the victory for Mercedes in the 1930s. Manfred von Brautich was the last winner for Mercedes here. In fact, there was a big team order rivalry between himself and his teammate that year. Big argument in the pits about who should be winning. Rudi Caracciolo was the man he was up against, and indeed Mercedes finished third with Caracciolo in the first ever Monaco Grand Prix all the way back in 1929. So there is a tremendous history for the brand and this Monaco circuit, and it's been added to here today thanks to Nico Rosberg's exploits. So everybody getting their moment to congratulate the top three here in Monaco. And then it's time to get that champagne spraying at this unique celebration down on the start-finish line. The celebrations in Monaco have only just begun, and for local resident Nico Rosberg, it could be a street party to remember for a very long time.